Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, a trendy neighborhood built on top of a mass burial site.
As soon as you unearth bones, you're gonna have some kind of backlash from that.
Memories of a troubled past hang in the air. They're so vivid, you can almost touch them.
I was kind of in a state of disbelief. I kind of felt shivers crawling up my spine, and I felt pretty uneasy.
The streets of Griffin Town in downtown Montreal are haunted by a bevy of terrifying spirits.
The ghost of Mary Gallagher is said to return here every 7 years to look for her head. Where is it? Where is that bucket? Where is that head?
Cosmopolitan Montreal in Quebec, Canada, is an unlikely setting for a series of ghost stories. But hiding away in the modern world is a small neighborhood with memories of a traumatic past. Griffin Town may look like a burgeoning metropolis, but the swanky apartment blocks and restaurants can only paper over the cracks of a torrid history where famine, disease, and murder were regular occurrences. Anton Golikov runs paranormal tours of the haunted area, known affectionately by the locals as the Griff.
There's ghosts everywhere. I think it's a ghost town, right? All the people that got evicted, everybody that just had to leave, you know, a lot of them died. A lot of them passed away here because they had nowhere to go. They didn't have any money. They couldn't move to the other side of the canal. This whole neighborhood was ravaged. So there's a lot of old souls that still permeate this area.
It's not uncommon to hear of an entire area that is considered to be haunted, and in the case of Griffin Town, it would sort of fit that blueprint very well because there's so much troubled history to the location. So it makes a lot of sense that people might feel that there's something sort of haunted to the area.
People often report maybe somebody watching them from behind a curtain or looking in through the new windows from outside the street, or sounds coming from the pipes. Just something is there.
In recent years, gentrification has turned the once industrial location into one of Montreal's wealthiest neighborhoods. But many believe that the seemingly endless construction work has woken the dead.
Griffin Town is undergoing lots of redevelopment at the moment. It's becoming a new metropolis. There are bones being dug up, and there are spirits that are seemingly now restless as a result of all this redevelopment and building works.
Any kind of change to the spirit's natural place or habitat or their home affects them very much as it affects us. So all the spirits that, you know, aren't laid to rest, or the spirits that have passed down there, the spirits that it was their home, they definitely think it would affect the supernaturalness that happens on the land.
A lot of the residents also around these parts, they feel like there's a presence, you know, particularly in the basements and the foundations of the buildings. So, you know, you build a new foundation like there, you know, you dig a hole, but sometimes you find bodies, bones, all kinds of surprises.
One of the spirits who remains very much alive in the local psyche is Mary Gallagher, a local prostitute who lived in an apartment on the corner of William and Murray Streets in Griffin Town.
The house has been demolished for a while, but the story remains. You'd often see people sitting in lawn chairs on the evening of the anniversary of the death of Mary Gallagher. And oftentimes what they will see is a headless corpse walking around, kind of ambling, probably looking for its head.
Some spirits like to show themselves on dates of significance, such as anniversaries, birthdays, or even the date they died. It's fairly common, and there are examples of like grey ladies, red ladies, and those kinds of apparitions, historical apparitions, seen at notably haunted locations on exactly the same date every few years.
Mary's story dates back to June the 27th, 1879.
Mary Gallagher and her friend, Susan Kennedy, went out for a bar hop. And they went all the way down to the Old Port, which is a bit of a walk away from here. And they came across this one man named Michael Flanagan, very robust, drunk Irish man, sitting in a bar by himself, drinking whiskey. Perfect client, perfect person to bring over with them. And they started working their charms on him.
The trio headed back to 242 William Street.
Now, the story has many different angles. The best witness, the most reliable witness, was a woman that lived downstairs. She was a housewife, and that morning she heard, first of all, a scream, followed by just this whacking sound, this continuous kind of whacking into a wooden floor right above her dinner table. And she looked up and she saw a little hole start to form in the wood. And a little bit of blood started dripping down through this new hole in her ceiling.
Later that day, the police found the lifeless body of Mary Gallagher.
The strangest sight that they saw actually was near the bed. There was a bucket, and in the bucket was her head. So it was a headless corpse, bleeding all over the floor. There was axe marks on the wall, axe marks on the floor, so the body had been chopped. And actually that's what caused this hole to form in the lady's ceiling.
Despite a lack of evidence, it was Susan Kennedy who was imprisoned for the rest of her life for the murder of Mary Gallagher.
The one thing to keep in mind here is that Susie was a little bit jealous of Mary Gallagher. They had this very keen professional relationship, but on the personal level, there was a little bit of jealousy between the two of them. Everybody kind of claimed innocence in this case, but the police pinned the murder on Susie Kennedy because of these stories of jealousy, because of these other clients that had witnessed these two women fighting.
Despite being brutally murdered over 130 years ago, Mary Gallagher still visits her now unrecognizable home.
We often hear in ghost stories in general this sort of notion of an angry spirit or a spirit that holds a grudge, and perhaps they'd been murdered or there'd been an event that they felt they'd been wronged, and until the spirit can avenge it, then it's not able to ascend to wherever it's going to go next.
The ghost of Mary Gallagher is said to return here every 7 years to look for her head that is no longer on the second floor. Where is it? Where is that bucket? Where is that head?
Before Griffin Town existed, the land was a portage route for Native Americans. After the British arrived in 1760, the area eventually fell into the hands of an Anglo-Irishman named Thomas McCord.
While Thomas McCord was on a business trip back to England, he had a very unscrupulous partner that sold his own land to a certain Mary Griffin, where the name Griffin Town comes from.
The underhand founding of Griffin Town in 1799 is very much in keeping with its history ever since.
Griffin Town is kind of a portrait of Montreal. A lot of demographics, a lot of different peoples came through here. In the 1840s, there was a big influx of Irish immigrants and became a shanty town, basically. One of the biggest shanty towns in North America.
The neighborhood never recovered and remained an impoverished area of Montreal.
This place was eventually rezoned by the mayor of Montreal in the 60s, and because of that, we saw one of the mass deportations of people from a neighborhood, and from what was a large population of 85,000 people, went right down to about 2,000, 1,000 people. A lot of the unwanted things were brought here to Griffin Town and dumped into this canal.
With such a checkered history, it's no surprise that the ghosts of the past have been awoken.
I think that this place, like I said, has seen a lot of tragedy. It's seen a lot of death from disease, from crime, just a lot of suffering. A lot of people's suffering still remains here. The energy is still very heavy. You could walk down the street and feel like something is following you. And that's probably the past that's following you.
A past full of anguish that refuses to be forgotten. In downtown Montreal, you'll find one of Canada's most haunted regions. Founded in 1799, Griffin Town sits uncomfortably in the modern world, a neighborhood with a dark past. The Lachine Canal is the lifeblood of the district known as the Griff.
In the 1850s, this whole place expanded. The canal actually grew for bigger shipping, bigger boats that would pass through here. You see this swing bridge, which is behind me over here, and it connected Point St. Charles, which is on the other side, to the Griffin Town, which is here.
The Wellington Swing Bridge is no stranger to tragedy and supernatural sightings.
On the bridge, it's been reported that there's a ghost of a little boy that is walking along the bridge to the very, very edge of it, right on the left over there. He's wearing a suit. He's well dressed. He's looks like he's returning from church or something like that. And he seems to be in a rush. He seems like he's going somewhere in a rush. And he starts to run at one point at the end of the bridge, and then he jumps and just disappears, so we don't see him anymore. Don't know if he's fallen or something. It looks like he's just gone.
Reports from September 1908 tell of the 13-year-old boy's horrific death.
So the operator in this building over here pulled the lever, the bridge went to its position right like that, and the boy was waiting in the middle of the bridge for all the shipping to pass. And then as the bridge started to turn, he started to run, and he wanted to jump onto the embankment over here, and unfortunately he fell, and he got crushed as the bridge came into place. They called the local doctor here. People took a look at this kid. He was dead. His name was Arthur Carr, and they put out a notice, Arthur Carr dead at the Wellington Swing Bridge. And nobody claimed his body. His parents never came. There was no family that came to claim him. The theory is that his spirit still remains here, untouched, and still tries to cross this bridge every now and then.
The boy that's seen frequently running across the bridge in a sort of reenactment of what happened the day he died. So that would be considered a residual ghost. It's sort of the notion of something being played out over and over again. I think you could say that would be linked to the weight of the tragedy of the event, which is, it was a young boy that was killed in quite terrible, gruesome circumstances, and B, that apparently his parents weren't around, or no one ever claimed the body. So I think that a story like that is retained in the public consciousness for a very long time, and that would contribute to this idea of it apparently sort of being seen quite often.
Makes a lot of sense to me, because he's waiting for somebody to probably come get him and show him the way home. Can you imagine being a little kid and losing you know, your place or where you were, or not knowing where your parents are and being stuck in almost your own cosmic loop of trying to figure and find out and being scared. And so that's definitely why he's still there, and that's just so sad. He needs a spirit rescue.
Anton has experienced the ghost of Arthur Carr firsthand while taking a paranormal tour around the canal.
We were standing around here and I was telling the story about the boy getting crushed right over here. And as everybody peered over the side, a big splash came in the water. Didn't make any sense. It was like an upward splash. It wasn't like something fell in, but like something was trying to come out. We all witnessed this. Nobody threw a rock or anything. There's no reason for that to happen. We all just kind of acknowledged the fact that maybe the spirit still does live around these parts.
Obviously, a tragedy has happened on that bridge. That poor boy lost his life, so he will still be trying to make that jump now. As a spirit child, he'd still be trying to make that jump, so people will be able to see him.
People often say, what is a ghost doing, or what is their purpose? Are they trying to remind us of the past? Are they trying to hold on to some kind of piece of the past? I'm not sure. I think that the spirits relive certain traumatic events that might have happened to them. And they relive them over and over and over again because there's a certain kind of, disbelief. There's a certain kind of agony in the way that they died. And that's something that remains here. If you stand around here, you could really feel that kind of vibration, you know?
Not all the ghosts of Griffin Town are believed to be human. Some lurk in the dark, terrifying the local residents. Catherine Ridyard has lived in and around the neighbourhood for 25 years. She vividly recalls her supernatural encounter on the streets of the Griff.
It was late summer. It was about 2:20 in the morning, and I was coming home from that direction over there. And I stood on the corner where the light is, and I looked this way, and I saw what appeared to be, it looked like to me like somebody was squatting on the sidewalk. It was somebody squatting. That's what I thought. I realized that, no, that's not a person, because it was just too tall to be squatting on the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden I got this feeling, and it looked up at me, and it noticed me noticing it, and it looked at me and had red eyes. And the first thing that went into my gut feeling was, it's hungry.
The unworldly being that scared Catherine so much is believed to be a shadow person.
Shadow people is a name given to a spirit that looks or resembles a dark shadow. It's normally faceless and they move within the shadows. Some are seen as being darker than the dark of the actual area they're seen in.
Some say time travelers, some say nasty negative spirits, some just say it's a manifestation of spirit. Some say it's your own shadow. So it could be a vast array of different things.
I mean, I could tell the outline of it looked like somebody was like a big frog, almost like in appearance, sort of. But it was a black shadow, and it had like a head, but it had also red eyes, and it scared me.
With some trepidation, Catherine has returned to the location of her terrifying experience.
It was here, and I came back the next day, and I looked at the ground, and it looked like there was some kind of black goo on the ground. Now, you've got to remember, this is 8 years ago. And then this pole has been this way ever since. I still get a bad feeling just standing here. You know, I don't like it. I don't walk on the side of the street at night, or in the daytime for that matter.
Catherine has since begun to study the strange beings.
I heard something about shadow people and red glowing eyes and that kind of thing. And I looked it up on the internet, and I saw the exact same shadow, the same squat posture, the same head and black, exactly the same with the red glowing eyes. Now, I researched this particular kind of shadow person, and it's a very bad one to have around or to even be anywhere in your vicinity. And it's supposed to be really demonic, not nice at all. nor any other shadow people in my opinion there, but this is like the worst one to have.
Shadow people are not what I would class as a human being. They would be a manifestation of a presence. Now, this could be negative or it could be positive energy. Sometimes from past experience, shadow people have been known to be negative people. So the fears of the feelings of being watched and fear and panic and things like that are usually associated with shadow people.
Catherine has continued to be haunted by the dark shadows.
I started getting sick and things started happening, like bad luck stuff. I was hearing knocking noises in my room. I refused to sleep in my bedroom anymore after that. I would stay at the kitchen table, and that was freaky too. I took a picture in a mirror and this thing was beside me in the mirror and it wasn't there when I was in the bathroom taking the picture.
In all walks of life, we can sit there and say 7 years bad luck comes from smashing a mirror. You know, how many times is that actually true? Whereas if you come into contact with a shadow person, there could be a negative presence associated with that she would have sat and probably thought to herself that I've seen this and this could be associated with it.
Catherine is on the road to recovery, but she'll never forget the night she came face to face with evil.
If I hadn't noticed it as quickly as I did, it hadn't noticed me before I noticed it. I think I may very well have disappeared, you know, like, because I think in that alley there's something, there's a doorway or something, and like this pole here is still here, and it's still like looks like it's eaten away, and I think it comes out once in a while, and it might just grab somebody. Just standing here gives me goosebumps. My health has improved 100%. I'm happy about that. But I'm also, you know, I'm very wary of things. I believe that things go bump in the night, and that's the way it is.
And in Griffin Town, there are many other spirits that go bump in the night. Griffin Town's Lachine Canal officially opened in 1825, turning Montreal into one of the world's major ports. This channel of water has become one of the Griff's most paranormally active areas.
Certain areas of Griffin Town are said to be more haunted than others. There's a particular area by the canal that has seemed to attract more spirit phenomena than others, and that might well be due to tragic circumstances.
We are on the extremity of the canal. We're actually right next to the Peel Basin. On the other side of the canal over here, there's a lot of ghost sightings that happen. A lot of people take photos around these parts. A lot of tourists come by here, and people notice on their photos after they've taken them that there's orbs, there's little white dots that are floating around in the photos. It's a very strange phenomenon, you know? It's kind of indicative of spirits that might be still living around these parts.
During the Irish potato famine between 1845 and 1849, many people fled Ireland and headed to North America. Loaded onto cargo ships, they arrived malnourished and carrying diseases like typhus. Many were quarantined in sheds alongside the canal in Griffin Town.
They were coming to the old port of Montreal, getting off the ships and just dropping like flies. So these fever shacks that they built here in 1847 housed all of these very sick and dying refugees. At the time, in 1847, Montreal was a very small city. It was a population of about 50,000. All of a sudden have to accommodate 75,000 new people. The citizens of Montreal were not happy about the fact that there was this vast sea of Irish that were contagious and bringing this disease into town with them.
Drastic action was taken by the authorities.
The army was called. They were put on all the rail bridges, on all of the bridges that would cross into town. It was almost kind of like a zombie apocalypse type thing. You know, they put this fence alongside. All these people that were sick on the other side couldn't cross over. And if they would be shot or they would be thrown into the canal over here.
That's the kind of thing that people don't sort of forget very easily, and there's something very haunting about that, of course, so it makes sense that we associate an area like that with ghosts and sightings and hauntings and that sort of thing.
One of the ghosts who has been spotted near the canal is a former mayor of Montreal.
In 1847, there was a certain John Easton Mills. He was actually American, but he was the mayor of Montreal, elected. He was a very generous man. He was aiding the sick. In a way, he himself took it as his responsibility to help the people that were dying on the other side of the river.
Inevitably, John Easton Mills succumbed to typhus.
The mayor himself, at the age of 54, contracted this disease. It was his last act, was to bring food and water to the poor there, and he passed away. So in a way, this apparition that we see over there is probably still doing his duties to these people.
He was trying to show compassion and humility to these people, and I think the land very much imprinted him doing that. So that's probably why he's still seen to this day doing the same thing, to show that these people weren't, animals, they're humans and they feel, and the mayor saw that.
Obviously, he did have that caring nature about him in order to look after those people who were quite ill. And it is not uncommon for people to actually come back and still care for people that they think is still there.
The typhus epidemic of 1847 claimed the lives of 6,000 people. The victims of this tragic event are buried just below the cycle path that runs alongside the Lachine Canal today.
There was so much death that they had to build trenches to get rid of the dead. They had to build these huge, huge trenches. They dug these trenches and they would just throw hundreds of bodies at a time and bury them on this site here. Right now it's a bike path, so a lot of people that are biking there, they feel this negative energy. They don't know what it's coming from, but it still remains. And a lot of the excavations that are happening in Griffin Town, a lot of the new buildings that are popping up, once the foundations are being dug, once the buildings are starting to be built, they discover remnants of the bodies right underground there.
One man who is more than aware of the paranormal energy that crackles in the air of the Griff is Louis Lemontagne.
This area is in the process of being gentrified. There's many condos popping up, so a lot of the history is being forgotten, but there's a lot of kind of dark and really interesting history around this neighborhood, Griffin Town.
Louis remembers exploring the area when he moved to Griffin Town.
My first time here, I was with a couple of friends, and it was mid-January, pretty cold day, and we were going for a walk. We came upon this bridge, and suddenly we just stopped for about 20 minutes, and I was staring off for what seemed like at least half an hour. After a while, I felt like I was in a bit of a trance-like state. I saw kind of a orb glimmering amidst the grass. It was kind of a translucent orb, letting out kind of a diffuse, milky light, kind of something dancing about that felt superimposed on my vision, almost like holographic. I wasn't sure that if I went up to it, I'd be able to touch it, but I could definitely feel it was tangible.
Orbs are thought to be essentially disembodied spirits of, the people who have died and sort of unable to leave or pass on to wherever a spirit would go after death. So they're frequently described as being like sort of balls of electricity floating through the air.
It really captured my attention, and I just stared at it for a while. And as soon as I considered walking over to see if it was a trick of the light or what was going on, my friend nudged me and told me to go home.
Louis knew he had to come back and explore some more.
It was actually a couple of weeks later. I was walking by myself this time at night, around midnight or so, and I could see this conglomeration of white orbs kind of dancing above the mounds. So whereas last time I only saw one, this time it looked like there could have been thousands. But I could hear kind of in the background these voices in my head, so I thought I was having like an auditory hallucination or something like that. All of a sudden, I just kind of closed my eyes to focus in on what I was hearing, and it sounded like the wailing of voices. At first, I thought it sounded maybe like a choir or something like that, but I realized there was an element of pain in the voices as well. I kind of collapsed, like slumped over on the mound, and when I came back to my senses, I could see ships, kind of ghost ships, just floating above me, I guess, paired with the sound of these voices coming again.
Spirit shows you things when they're trying to communicate with you and tell you certain things. So whatever they show you from that point on, whether it's in your mind's eye or physically in front of you, I really believe it has to do with the spirits that are there and the story that they're trying to tell the person that they're communicating with.
The sheer size of the paranormal event stunned Louis.
I was kind of in a state of disbelief. I didn't really trust my senses. I was pretty curious as well, but also pretty frightened. I kind of felt shivers crawling up my spine, and I felt pretty uneasy.
If a person's quite open and quite sensitive, to go into a trance-like state, which would enable his subconscious to actually communicate with the orbs and obviously followed them as to what he was supposed to do, then it could be a possibility that they've actually led him to where they wanted him to be.
After a while, it just kind of dissipated, and I was just left there kind of bewildered, wondering what I was doing, and got back on the bridge and I walked home.
Before his mystical encounter, Louis was unaware of the history of the area.
At the time, I had no idea that this was a burial site, so I thought I was going a bit crazy, and I just kind of brushed it off. And it's only when I spoke to my friend a couple of weeks later that he told me that this was actually a mass burial site from the mid-19th century.
1847 was called Black 47 here in Montreal. All these dead and dying still buried on the other side of the canal. And the orbs are the vestige of that. They still float, these spirits that are forgotten and underground.
The renovation of Griffin Town may explain why the paranormal activity is so rife.
Another sort of trope that we often hear coming out of stories about ghost sightings in Griffin Town is this notion that somehow spirits have been disturbed because bodies have been dug up in the process of rebuilding the area. This is quite a commonly held notion in many cultures throughout the world, that the idea that if you disturb a body after it's been laid to rest, then it somehow creates a restlessness in the spirit, or indeed, if a body hasn't been properly laid to rest, the spirit will remain restless until that has been rectified.
Unearthing any human remains in general and disrupting the ritual and the laying to restness that has been done will definitely riff the spirit, because again, you're disrupting a holy ground, a holy place, whether ancient or modern. As soon as you unearth bones, you're disrupting that spirit who's laid to rest. You're gonna have some kind of backlash from that, whether it's karmic or cosmic.
Louis still can't quite believe what he experienced that night.
The only way I can justify it in my own mind is that, maybe in certain places where a lot of things happen, it can leave some sort of trace, let's say on electromagnetic level or something, I don't know. It really did feel like time was an illusion at that point, and the spirits of the people who suffered here and arrived here almost 200 years ago felt very much alive.
The paranormal energy generated beneath the banks of the Lachine Canal continues to show itself, even in the modern surroundings of 21st century Griffin Town. Many of the ghosts of Griffin Town are believed to be projections of its traumatic history, but one of the most iconic landmarks harbors spirits from a more recent past.
This is the land of beer. Montreal is the land of beer. You know, Griffin Town, because of all the Irish, was a very popular drinking place. In 1861, there was a man by the name of William Dow. He was a very brilliant businessman. He kind of made this big conglomerate, 13 companies all together, and they opened this brewery, which is behind us over here. Eventually, this whole place just fell to ruin. The brewery was no longer used, the facilities were a little bit dated, so it got abandoned.
The brewery is believed to be one of Griffin Town's paranormal hotspots.
There's a bunch of urban explorers that still go in there, take a look around, see what's in there. There's rumors abound that the Montreal Mafia uses this place as a sort of dumping ground for bodies. They say that there's a few bodies that are buried in concrete in the big silos that are back there on the other side. In the top floors, there's oftentimes paranormal explorers that go to see what's going on in this building. They say that there's a very intense, horrible ghostly activity up on the top floors. The ghost that's particular to this place kind of doesn't fall in line with the mafia stories or the brewing stories or anything like that. It's actually the ghost of a little girl.
Mediums who have investigated inside the Dow Brewery have dated the death of the girl to the late 1990s.
Oftentimes people report hearing the crying of this little girl coming from the ground, and when she hears people passing by, she stops crying and she starts calling for help. She starts asking people to pull her out of this hole in the ground.
I think obviously the atmosphere tends to absorb any sort of energy. Now, usually with tragedies, murders, anything like that, you would assume that the trauma and the traumatic experiences of those people have been absorbed by the atmosphere. So that would lend itself as to why the voices of people are heard and screams are heard, and obviously it just replays itself over and over again.
We have no idea where this girl comes from and how she ended up there. There are some theories. Maybe she was one of the daughters or something of a mafia boss or something like that. She got put into the ground. We're not sure. But she's definitely in there. She's crying for help. And if ever you go in there, you'll feel that energy up on the top floor.
With so many Irish immigrants entering Griffin Town, St. Anne's Catholic Church on the corner of Mountain and Basin Streets was once a bustling part of the town.
We're in the ruins of the St. Anne's Church, which was built here in 1698 originally. This little chapel stood for about a century and then it burned down. The church was rebuilt in 1854. It was a lot bigger. All the Irish would come here. They could convene here for Mass. You could take a look just down the line. You see we're actually in the church right now. The benches that they have on the sides are where the pews used to be. The foundations, you see all the stone on the side there. And behind us in the forest, there used to be a priest's house. The priest used to live right back there.
During the 1960s, Griffin Town was turned from a residential area into an industrial zone.
A lot of buildings got knocked down, demolished. Population of about 100,000 shrunk right down to about 2,000 people. Everybody got moved to the other side of the river over there. Everything became parking lots, industrial areas, big factories on either side of the canal. And there was nobody to come be the parish anymore, so they knocked it down as well. And these are the ruins that remain.
Although the building is gone, the energy has remained within the footprint of the church.
A lot of people are reporting that they're hearing certain things in the middle of the night. People usually hear footsteps following them in the middle of the street. Some people even hear bells, which are coming from this forest area, just like church bells that are going on in the middle of the night. There was a man who's actually, I believe he lived in one of these condos here. He was walking down the street going home, and he saw a priest having a funeral ceremony. And they all walked down this aisle to the entrance of the church. And as they reached the entrance, they all just disappeared. It's as though as they were exiting into the street, they were gone.
Now, there was no noise, there was no sound. But the person who witnessed this said that the mouths were open, they were singing, and there should have been noise. This is an example of a residual haunting, because the spirits seemingly moved through, oblivious to their surroundings, and then suddenly disappeared.
Somebody obviously passed away that was grave importance to the land or the people that are in the procession, and it made an imprint on the land, so it shows itself from time to time replaying as residual energy does.
Griffin Town remains a mecca for ghost hunters from around the globe, fascinated with searching for old spirits within the new world.
I definitely believe that towns can be haunted, especially with the type of history that Griffin Town has, with all of the Irish immigrants that fled the potato famine and came over on boats with horrible conditions, and they were sick, and then they died, and then they just threw them in mass graves in the canal. I mean, so the canal is just a mass grave that would definitely hold a lot and bring a lot of energy, negative energy, because it's not like they were given their own tombstone and laid to rest in the traditional form. They were just thrown together in a hole and buried. I wouldn't be rested if that was me.
I think a lot of ghosts remain for diverse reasons, some for more benevolent reasons, others, like the boy that got crushed in the bridge, for the agony that they might have encountered and endured. And there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of suffering, and I think it's within the atmosphere here.
Even as the million-dollar apartments rise above the old town, experts believe that the ghosts of the past will continue to be uncovered in the Griff.
It's a land of gentrification. You got all these really expensive apartment blocks which are going up on old factory sites, on old land that has seen a lot of tragedy. So the new residents, the young generation of young professionals that are living here nowadays, report a lot of ghosts and spirits and sightings of paranormal activity around these parts. They're digging up the past and now finding all that old history and all the old secrets of the Griffin Town.
Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, a medieval English house built on top of an ancient pagan burial site.
I think if you unearth human remains, ancient or not, you're gonna get angry spirits.
Devil worshipping and human sacrifice have taken place within the four walls of this quaint-looking inn.
You don't realise until you actually step foot in there just how horrible that place actually is.
This is the unholiest of homes.
The Bishop of Gloucester visited the Ram Inn to exorcise the spirits and was later quoted, "The Ram Inn was the most evil place that he had ever had the misfortune to visit."
Gloucestershire, Britain. The small village of Watton-under-Edge lies within the Cotswolds, a scenic part of the country where people often come to enjoy the peace and serenity of the English countryside. But there is one building that looks a little out of the ordinary, an eyesore on the picturesque landscape. Experts believe devil worship was practiced here and that human sacrifices were made within these four walls. It's unsurprising the ancient Ram is believed to be one of the most haunted buildings in Britain. The medieval inn has been in Caroline Humphrey's family for 50 years.
These buildings could tell a story nobody else can. The youngsters today, they don't really know what history is until you walk into a building. You can smell it, you can feel it. It's so totally different to any normal house. When young people come in, they walk around with their chins on the ground, you know, they cannot believe it.
Paranormal investigator Chris Howley has been studying the listed property for over a decade.
I mean, as soon as you see the ancient Ram Inn, you can see how old the building is. So the energies that are within the building, you should be in for a good night, regardless of any activity. Just the feelings of the history of the building alone that are seeping through every pore of the brickwork just fill you with excitement, really.
Fellow ghost hunter Phil Jones is also fascinated by the Ram.
I've probably been here somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 times. We went through a phase of, we had so much happening, so much unexplained stuff. We just loved the place, we just kept coming back. At one stage, I think we came here 5 times in 1 year or something ridiculous. But it's just a fascinating place. Always left us with unanswered questions, which is what we want, really.
During a Ouija board session at the ancient Ram, Phil and his fellow enthusiasts had a paranormal encounter, all captured on camera.
And we were talking away, asking questions as you do.
Can you point the glass to who you intend to affect?
And then all of a sudden, the energy changed. The movement of the glass on the table became very violent. But all of a sudden, we could hear this noise.
What the hell's that?
And it sounded like drums. And I was like, well, what's that coming from? The first thing we do on investigation, everybody turns their phone off because it affects the equipment. And I said to the girl sat next to me, Liz, and I said, that's your phone. She goes, it can't be, it's turned off. I said, that's coming from your coat.
Oh, it is? This is your phone. Yeah, but how did that go off?
So she pulled her phone out, and the phone was playing a video of her children, which had been to an African drumming class that day, just like a child's activity. She turned the video off, she put the phone on the table. And we carried on, and the glass was going violently again. And then all of a sudden, on the corner of the camera, the screen just went bright.
Oh, my God!
She picked the phone, she showed it to the camera, and it's just reoccurring number 6s, one after another, across the whole screen. And that was pretty eerie, pretty frightening. You know, our first sort of real experience of some of the bad vibes in this place, and it unnerved quite a few people, that did, for sure.
It's widely believed that the ancient ram is built on top of a pagan burial ground, which may explain the paranormal activity within.
Historically, there was a lot of importance put on the type of burial you receive, and if you had not been buried correctly, it could possibly lead to somebody's spirit having to come back into the real world and not being able to settle in the afterlife. So to then disrupt a burial site after somebody had been correctly buried would bring them back from the dead, essentially.
When you lay somebody to rest, whether it's their ashes or their bones, that is a special ritual in itself. You're making a holy, sacred, safe place. And when you unearth that, and you don't properly take the steps to do right what was done wrong, you're going to upset the other side, or whoever's bones you're doing this to.
And the fact that there was sacrifice, human sacrifice, child murders, highwaymen killing and murdering people there. You have all of this over many, many hundreds of years building up on the property and the land, and it's absorbed into the fabric of that building. There's no place for those spirits to go, and that seems to just trap them there, almost like a portal to the other side.
The ancient Ram Inn has stood in Watton-under-Edge for 1,000 years. It's one of the oldest houses in Britain.
I think it was built in the 900s, but our deeds go back to the 11th century. It's in the Domesday Book saying it goes back to Richard the Lionheart's reign. I believe it was a manor house, it was a tannery, it was also a brewery for the church. So the people that lived here were anything from peasants to royalty, really.
Historically, we don't know too much between 1145 and 1350. All that we know for this period of time is it was predominantly a church house, and it would have been used to house the stonemasons involved in the building of St Mary's Church, and possibly slaves, including children.
By the 20th century, the Ram was badly in need of renovation, and a local carpenter couldn't resist the challenge.
It was 1968 when John Humphreys bought the ancient Ram Inn for £2,500, and it wasn't until then that we got to hear of all the ghost stories.
Well, in 1968 I was 7. There were no such thing as ghost hunting events then, and nobody really wanted to come and look for ghosts. Mum and Dad didn't really elaborate on the paranormal activity that was going on here because obviously they didn't want to scare the children. I slept above the grave and in various other places in the Ram, and had I known that, probably at the time, I'd have run a mile.
John lived amongst the spirits at the Ram for nearly 50 years until he sadly passed away in December 2017.
John is a legendary character in the paranormal world. He's had so much dealings with the paranormal, both inside and outside of the ancient Ram. He was a very lovable rogue, very eccentric, very, very knowledgeable about the history of the Ram.
John himself feels like the spirits know him, and he has a connection with them. And I believe his spirit is probably still there, looking after the place.
During John's time at the ancient Ram, he discovered many of the reasons behind the paranormal activity.
We do know that the ancient Ram Inn is built on the intersection of 2 ley lines. Now, ley lines are said to be naturally occurring bands of energy that span the globe, and ancient monuments have been built along these lines. So it said the energy from Stonehenge could be powering the building for all the spirits and ghosts that inhabit this place. Also, we know that water was redirected from 2 streams during the building of St Mary's Church, and it's also said that a dark portal of negative energy, demonic in nature, was opened up. So you've got a building here built on ley lines with a portal of demonic energies, and I'm just wondering in 1968 if John actually knew that when he bought the property.
The
The ancient ram has become infamous amongst the ghost hunting community.
The building's been featured on television and it's very well known in the paranormal community, and it is on the bucket list of every paranormal investigator to come and investigate here.
So once you do walk in, it's quite dusty, it's quite old, it's quite dark and quite damp as well. You don't realise until you actually step foot in there just how horrible that place actually is.
I first started investigating at the Ancient Ram Inn back in 2005. My first thought when I walked through the door was, this is going to be a good night. Very oppressive atmosphere, dark. You can almost feel the energy within the building when you first step over the threshold.
Which is exactly how the guests must have felt when John Humphreys opened the doors of the Ram to the public.
John bought the Ram Inn with his wife and moved in with his family to run the place as a B&B. And John has quite amusing stories when they had guests in. They'd be cooking breakfast and they'd have the bacon and eggs in the kitchen on the side. They'd turn round to grab some toast to put on the plate, and then as they returned to the plate of the bacon and eggs, it had vanished. It's also said that many of their guests who had spent the night in the bishop's room would leave the Ram Inn in the middle of the night, never to return because of what it was that they'd experienced within the building.
They were able to get out of the windows, I do believe, because the building's built in a bank, so a bishop's room, I would think, is quite easy to get out of. People used to leave in the middle of the night, never to be seen again.
The sheer volume of spirits beneath the thatched roof of the Ram may keep some people away, but for a paranormal investigator, the medieval home is incredibly alluring.
So the Ancient Ram Inn, in my opinion, is teeming with spiritual energy. There are so many different levels of energy from different history and points of history. You have intelligent spirits there, and those are able to communicate intelligently with you. They're able to interact with you, move objects, leave messages on voice recorders. Residual energy, however, is more like your ghost. So you might get that impression of something forming in the room and then walking off and disappearing into a door or a wall. So residual energy is like a playback of past events, like echoes of the past.
The oppressive atmosphere may make the ancient Ram feel uninhabitable for human life, but the dark, historic building is the perfect home for a whole host of paranormal beings. The ancient Ram Inn sits uncomfortably within the beautiful village of Watton-under-Edge in the Cotswolds. The building, believed to be Britain's most haunted property, used to be 3 times larger and was used by various industries until 1820, when it became a pub. The main seating area was christened the men's kitchen.
In the men's kitchen, we have reports of baby crying, so you hear that sound coming out of the darkness. The reports of 2 apparitions, 2 men stood either side of the fireplace. But I think the most famous one is the lady in blue, who's the ghost of, the name that we've been given is Elizabeth, and she was apparently murdered by 2 highwaymen. And her ghost still haunts the old kitchen area.
Fabrics of a building will always hold on to recordings, so what we would say aren't intelligent beings, but the fabric of the building, the stone, actually absorbs the energy, so it's more like a video replay.
Energy can't be destroyed or created, so it's got nowhere to go. So if it's good energy, it makes a good imprint. If it's something bad or horrific, the imprint is bad and negative, and it stays there.
Ghost hunter Phil Jones was holding a spirit board session in the men's kitchen when one of the team members began to feel unwell.
You could see her gradually sinking into the point where we had to carry her out the building. She just couldn't walk. You know, she was just like a rag doll. One of our medium sensitives who was with us at the time picked up on this quite negative energy.
At the moment, there is a shadow that's kind of over top of you.
The room went colder. The feel completely changed. The atmosphere completely changed. People noticed it.
Could it be that Phil and his team had contacted one of Elizabeth's murderers?
The sensitive said there's a spirit here and he's called Michael, and he isn't a very nice guy. He said some horrible things about some of the things he had done or what he wanted to do, and the whole atmosphere changed. Some of our team become very sort of edgy and aggressive and not very like themselves, you know. I don't believe in demons, but I do believe in a saying, as above, so below. I mean, if you're not a very nice person in life, you're probably not going to be a very nice person in death.
Upstairs in the Ram is the most haunted room of all, one that former owner John Humphreys treated with trepidation and respect.
I think one of the most interesting rooms in the ancient Ram Inn has got to be the bishop's room. I know John used to have a ritual before entering the room. He would grab the crook.
I've got to give you permission to go in here.
And rap on the door 3 times, calling out, "Is anybody here?"
Is there anyone here?
And making the sign of the cross, he would enter the room. Now, John says he used to do this because countless times when he was in his bed at night, fast asleep, he would be woken by the door of the bishop's room being rattled furiously and making quite a sound which echoed through the building. And so John said by performing this ceremony, it seemed to calm that activity down.
I think the bishop very much appreciates that. Just him giving the common courtesy, I'm gonna knock 3 times before I come into the door. It's just like living with someone else, having spirit in your home. And spirit should also respect you too, and your boundaries that you have, because it is your home and you're coexisting together.
The mood in the bishop's room is quite dark, especially at night when you've got the lights out. You've got 3 beds, which are commonly used by ghost hunters to sit on.
Years ago, before ghost hunting was invented, Dad had a paranormal team. They ended up stabbing the beds because you get a very heavy weight on your chest when you're sleeping in there. Or even awake sometimes, you can feel the pressure on your chest. It affects your chest for some reason.
After accommodating thousands of guests, it's no surprise that the bishop's room is bursting with paranormal activity.
This would have been the guest room where many guests fled the building in fear of the activity that was going on from the room. I mean, we've got stories of one of the former innkeepers being killed by having his head pushed into the flaming fire. It's quite a horrific way to die, so you can almost hear his screams coming from that fireplace. We've got the cavalier who was witnessed coming through the window on horseback through the room.
Phil Jones's paranormal team captured some amazing footage in the bishop's room.
3 of the girls from the team went up into the bishop's room and took the spirit board with them and placed it on the table. They'd had some experiences there earlier in the evening. They wanted to try and open some sort of communication, get some confirmation, so they decided to use the spirit board. And they were asking the questions, and they just literally placed their fingers on the glass, and the glass slid from under the fingers. It didn't tip, it didn't fly off and smash, it just shot off the board and their fingers are on the glass. Can't explain it. The table was level, the glass and the board were all level, nobody pushed it, they're literally just resting their fingertips.
There was definitely some supernaturalness going on with the glass moving itself. That's definitely unexplained evidence right there that I would say is supernatural, for sure.
Along the corridor from the bishop's room is another terrifying bedroom.
This is known as the Beaufort room, but also the witch's room. Now, it's nicknamed the witch's room because it is alleged that a witch hid out in this room with her familiar, the black cat, prior to being executed at the stake in the village. During the witch trials, anybody deemed to be doing anything against the church would have been deemed a witch. So they would have been hunted down and forcibly dragged off, and they were guilty regardless and executed quite unceremoniously.
The murdered woman clearly has unfinished business.
activity has been cited as a shadow figure that walks across the room. I have witnessed it myself, where I was on the landing just looking in through the doorway and a shadow passed the door frame coming from this side, across the frame and appearing to walk towards this side of the room. I came in expecting to find one of the team in here, but the room was empty.
Paranormal expert Barry Guy also had a supernatural encounter in the witch's room.
As we were sat in the room, we placed an object called a REM pod outside of the door. Now this device basically emits its own electromagnetic field, and if anything disturbs this field, the lights will flash and it will give off an audible alarm that you can hear. All of a sudden we heard the REM pod start going off. So we knew there was something outside interacting with the device or moving towards it. It started getting louder. It got louder and louder and louder. And then it was buzzing, almost as if a spirit was holding on to this device outside of the door. We waited with bated breath, and I decided, as the team leader, should I get up and open this door? And just before I lifted myself off the seat, there was an almighty crash and a bang on the wooden door of the witch's room. It shook. I mean, the whole room vibrated at the same time. We were all petrified. It was like pandemonium. It was such an intense experience because it happened quite quickly, but it was loud and we knew we were the only people in the building. We had locked up, so who else could it have been? Why was the REM pod going off violently? It was almost as if something was gripping hold of the device to make it shriek and that alarm to go off.
And where there's a witch, there's a cat.
It was coming to the end of one of our sessions one night. I put the camera down on the floor, actually, put the EVP recorder down on the floor as well, and we were all chatting away, and we all heard it as a disembodied voice, a cat meowing.
What was that? That was meowing.
We all sort of questioned if did anybody sort of flick a camera switch or anything that could remotely sound like a cat.
What was that?
And nobody had any equipment in their hands. We just sat down listening and doing the EVP session, and it definitely sounded like a meow. I'm pretty convinced it was a cat.
Even the locals are scared of the witch's room.
One of the other reports in this room is residents of Wootton Under Edge passing the ram have reported seeing a little girl, apparently crippled, just smiling at them throughout this window. Now, residents are aware of the legend of the Ram Inn, of all the ghosts here. Many of them will cross the road to avoid the Ram Inn and coming face to face with this soulless little girl just staring at them.
On top of all the stories about the witch's room, some remarkable footage was also captured here.
One night, a group of ghost hunters were investigating this room, and they actually sent me the footage that they caught. They were sat in this area, just doing normal calling out, is anybody here? And the locked-off camera had in sight, on the floor just down here, a camera bag with the strap, which was up. When you watch back the footage, you can see that the strap actually moves quite forcibly downwards on its own. And it's quite an intriguing piece of footage, one of my favourites from this room.
In that particular clip, you seem to see a bag in the corner of the screen, and there's a handle that appears to get pulled, lifted, and drops back down. And that is a sign of an intelligent haunting, an intelligent spirit, something that's able to communicate physically with the living.
Generally, I don't get scared, but the Ram Inn is, after 15 years of investigation, is one building I don't think I could pluck up the courage to stay alone in. It's the atmosphere. I'm used to ghost hunting, I'm quite rational, but this place is unique. The atmosphere is unique. It is so oppressive. I don't think I could spend the night here on my own.
The energy running through the walls of the building makes the ancient ram an uncomfortable yet fascinating place to visit. It's little wonder that some spirits also find it's impossible to leave. The ancient Ram Inn is a small, unassuming house in the village of Watton-under-Edge in Gloucestershire that fascinates and excites paranormal investigators worldwide. Ghost hunter Lee Bullock remembers his first visit to the 12th century building.
It's just the history, more than anything. I mean, it's next to two ley lines that are intersecting. It's a very, very old building. There's supposed to be sacrifices here, devil worship, witches that were killed here. So with a history like that, you've got to come and try and get something from the paranormal world. Coming through the door and walking through, especially coming up to the stairs, old wooden beams, old brickwork, very eerie, very, very eerie, and you felt creepy. It's the fear of the unknown.
Lee has visited twice and both times felt the power of the Ram.
The first experience when we were in the bishop's room, we heard chains. We were in another room and we could hear some sort of voice, a whiny voice come through on the cameras.
Is there anything you'd like to ask?
Are you trapped here? Are you trapped here?
Intrigued, Lee and his team returned as soon as they could.
So the second time we were here, we were investigating all downstairs. We did the bar area, the old barn, and then we got to the living room. Now, in the living room, we decided to do an EVP session using a digital recorder.
Okay, so we're here at the ancient Ram Inn, EVP session 1 in the living room.
When we listened to it back, we heard a whistling on there.
What was that?
None of us whistled. We know that. I've got the cameras to prove it. It couldn't have come from outside, because if it had, we would have heard it as well as the cameras picking it up. So we just can't explain that.
What was that?
Straight after that, we think we've caught a couple of voices. A female saying something like, "Take this away," followed by a man saying, "Cecil" or "Cecil." We just don't understand where those voices come from.
Spirits there like to communicate with you. They like to leave a response or a voice. Sometimes you don't even know that it's happened until you play back the recording afterwards. But on occasion, when you're in a room and you're calling out for spirits to interact with you, you might hear a response or you hear a sound or word, but only one of you hears it, the rest of you don't. That's what I call a DVP, direct voice phenomena.
The mysterious voice scared Lee.
It's kind of weird to hear something that you think, well, it doesn't have a body, it doesn't have a voice, it doesn't have lungs, vocal cords, tongue, mouth. How is it doing this? How is it whistling? How is it talking? Was it dead 100 years, 50 years, 500 years? Why is it communicating now?
Caroline Humphreys was just 7 years old when her family moved into the Ram in 1968. She came back to live here in the early 2000s.
And I got the opportunity in my mid-30s to live in the attic for a year, which was lovely. It's a beautiful building to live in. One day, we could hear a lot of noise. It sounded like our dog had been stuck behind some furniture and rubbish in the attic. And we went through all the attic junk. We couldn't see the dog. So we were going down the attic stairs looking for the dog, and the bedside cabinet from my bedroom was stuck in the doorway. So we removed the cabinet in order to look for the dog and evacuate the attic. And all over the floor were my cartomancy books and my tarot cards come out of the box, and still no sign of the dog. And he was downstairs up against Dad's door. He was shaking like a leaf, and Dad was sat down, totally oblivious of any activity that had happened.
Something had pushed the cupboard down the attic stairs. Could it be evidence of an active poltergeist in the ancient Ram?
Poltergeist is basically a noisy spirit, so that is a spirit that will move things, throw things, potentially touch you.
This is a ghost that people would consider to be malicious and threatening to the person that's being attacked by them. And they would be considered to be autonomous and intelligent, and they have their own personality.
Spirit manifests and holds energy in many different ways, whether it's taking it from the person or whether it's just able to harness the energy of the universe around it. So that's how I would explain the poltergeist activity. It's the energy that spirit's able to harness and how they're able to move or touch things. Because if they don't have a lot of energy, then they can't really make anything happen. If they have a lot of energy, then they can affect this or that or touch you or make themselves known.
It was quite a massive event, really, to have a cupboard go down the stairs. I was in a state of shock as well, but we were clearing up, and I found the 3 of Pentacles and the 3 of Swords. Those 2 cards were really significantly marked and damaged, whereas the rest of the cards were okay.
It was the final straw for Caroline.
I thought, well, that's all the evidence I need. I really hadn't experienced anything like that before, and Dad had only ever told me about the activity here, and I really didn't know if it was true until I actually experienced it myself, and then I became a firm believer, and when I left here then, I vowed never to come back again, and I've never slept here since.
Many ghost hunters head straight to the attic when they visit the Ram.
I've been to the Ancient Ram Inn a few times investigating with my team, and both occasions recently we've yielded some amazing results. In one incident, I set up an infrared camera in the attic of the building, and we also placed a motion-activated light in view of this camera, hoping that something would trigger the light off and we might get to see something, and we did. We caught what appears to be a shadow figure sort of emerging itself on the back wall in the attic, and it runs quickly past. But as it does this, the motion light turns itself on, which proves that it was triggered off. Something else was in that attic, and there was nobody around. We were all downstairs at the time.
Shadow figures are quite common in the paranormal world. Generally, they're seen as corner-of-the-eye experiences, so you don't actually catch too much detail. It's something that's just caught out of the peripheral of your vision, and when you turn your head to look, there's nothing there.
Of all the unexplainable happenings that ghost hunter Chris Howley has experienced over his time investigating the Ram, none have been scarier than the close call he had on the stairs.
One of the reports of the staircase is of a demonic force that will try and push you down these stairs. On an overnight investigation, we came into the building, we thought we would set a camera up, so we placed a camera in that crevice at the top there, looking down the stairs, and I had a small Newton's cradle, which I thought would be a good idea to place on the shelf. Now, I had one of my team members checking the monitor, so I put the cradle down, radioed through, is it in shot? Said, yeah, all's good. I then turned round to go back down the stairs. The walkie-talkie went off with a load of expletives as he witnessed this come off the shelf, and it flew past my head, down my right-hand side, and lay in a tangled mess at the bottom of the stairs. It was quite a frightening experience, but I was more disappointed that we hadn't managed to press record.
Experts believe that it's the powerful energy inside the ancient Ram that makes it such a supernatural hotspot.
Energy's everything, really. Especially if you're like a sensitive, you know, that's the first thing you'll pick up on. But I mean, even normal people will walk into a building, particularly here, and you'll feel, you know, the hairs on your neck will go up. You'll feel uncomfortable, and you'll feel, you know, all these sort of emotions you wouldn't expect to feel walking into a building. I mean, this building is on 2 ley lines as well. So the energy here is probably pretty pumping, because I think that sort of feeds the activity, you know, definitely.
All the energy generated by the building leads to a real mix of spirits.
So there have been lots of different reported hauntings taking place at the Ancient Ram, with some being malicious and some being benign. It's quite a common thing that you see with a building so old as this. So many people have come through over the years that there'll be lots of different characteristics of the ghosts.
There are some spirits in here which are light-hearted, I think, because I remember one of our sessions, a couple of the people just started giggling like children. Just completely out of the blue, and this laughing went on for about 20 minutes.
It's a good sign, though. That means we've got some energies going on.
Obviously, because of the ambience of the place, it was a bar, you know, it's full of people having a good time. Those energies are going to be residual and imprinted in the fabric of the building, and people latch onto those. Pretty sure there are some sort of nice guys. rather than all doom and gloom. But there are some proper ones you wouldn't want to mess with here for sure.
It's just like people in the real world. You're around a negative, nasty person and they hear laughing and they see smiling and, you know, have somebody be nice to them and they're just like, ugh, I don't know. Get me away from that. That's exactly how spirit is. They want that negative. They feed off of that chaos and they'll even try to create it. Even if it's just like mood swings, little things, little subtle. Spirit's very subtle. That's why they don't just come out and say, hey, I'm here, bang, boom, because they're very, very subtle.
But not all the spirits at the ancient ram are subtle. An evil spirit that inhabits the barn is known to terrify anyone who goes inside. The ancient Ram Inn is reputedly Britain's most haunted building. The medieval house is steeped in history and flooded with paranormal activity. Some of the spirits are good-natured, but in the barn, the ram shows its evil side.
We did experience quite a lot of activity whilst we were there. Some of the live streams actually picked that up, but one of the main things that we experienced was inside the barn area. Now, inside the barn area, it is notorious for a dark, tall, brooding figure. Now, he made himself known in a form of a mist that one of my colleagues actually caught on an iPhone. And once we slowed the stills down, we actually found that there was a face on the inside of this mist. So that was quite an extraordinary find for our evidence.
Phil Jones has also experienced the malevolent spirit in the barn.
The first time I experienced the black mass coming towards you at speed, that was really unnerving because you've got no way of getting out and this thing's just coming towards you. You try to rationalise, is it my eyes playing tricks? Is it because my eyes are focused into the dark or whatever? But you could see this mass changing shape as it was moving.
When you actually see that, it is quite exciting. And I think the adrenaline starts to flow then and you kind of want more things to happen.
Two of the other more evil spirits reportedly residing at the ram are the demonic incubus and his female counterpart, the succubus.
Traditionally, the incubus and the succubus will attack their victims at night, so they tend to prey on individuals while they're asleep, or they might find themselves waking up and feel like they are being attacked.
I don't know how to say it. It sort of is sexual with you in your dreams, and I guess you can hear the succubus sounds like they're high heels, but really it's her hooved feet coming for you.
A lot of the spirits that you encounter are quite peaceful in nature. They will just catch your attention and disappear. Incubus and succubus form part of the darker realm, and these are more evil in their intent.
Ghost hunter Lee Bullock tried to make contact with the succubus during one of his investigations at the ancient ram.
We use an EMF device to pick up electromagnetic fluctuations. It's changes in the environment, electromagnetic forces. So if you have a kettle, for instance, if you put the kettle on and put it next to it, it will go up. It's picking up on the electricity around the area. During the investigation, we always like to try and split up when we can. On this occasion, we split up and I was up here. I lay down on the bed. I was asking for the succubus spirit to interact with me.
If there's anybody in this building with us, if you can come into this room, please.
I thought, well, I'll put my laser pen on, see if anything can break the beams. I put it on and the EMF detector went off. So I turned my laser pen off, sat up, asked it to do it again, and it did.
That's you. Can you make that device?
I asked it to do it again, and it did.
Can you make it go off?
I can't explain it because it had been there throughout the investigation, not really gone off. So why it went off then, I don't know.
Thank God I've never experienced it, because I wouldn't be here sat talking to you now if I'd experienced incubus activity. I'm lucky in a sense that I just get poltergeist activity, and I think almost this building has a sense of respect that it doesn't freak me out too much. It's almost like it likes me.
But Caroline's father, John, didn't get away so lightly. He was known to be tormented by the succubus during his time at the Ancient Ram.
I think it scared him a little bit because he was trained to be a Baptist minister when he came out of the RAF, and he wasn't interested in ghosts, but his belief in the Holy Ghost meant that he should have some sort of respect for the spirits that are here. But apparently the first night he stayed here, he got dragged out of bed by his wrists.
John's first night in the Ancient Ram Inn was quite an eventful one. He was sleeping in the old man's kitchen, and in the middle of the night was forcibly dragged out of bed and thrown across the room. Quite a frightening experience for anybody.
The location of John's first experience with the succubus has now been partly dug up.
So here we have the spot where John spent his first night in the Ram Inn before being violently dragged out of his bed. As you can see, it's now an open grave. It was the Swindon ghost hunters in 1999 who encouraged John to have this excavated. Bones and the ceremonial daggers were found. These were taken away and analysed. John told me in the past that the police took the bones away. He didn't hear anything else back from that. The daggers were examined by a university in Bristol and were verified as ancient ceremonial daggers. So were they used in some ritualistic occultist sacrifice, or were they just part of the pagan burial ground and whatever went on in those dark days? I don't think we'll ever know. With a grave like this within the walls of the Ram Inn, it's no surprise that the building is so haunted. If we could dig deeper, who knows what we could find here.
The Ancient Ram Inn is as important to the paranormal community as it is to any historian. 1,000 years of life have been lived inside the medieval building, and although no humans currently reside in the extraordinary bedrooms, the Ram is still packed to the rafters with spirits.
It's good to keep a place that's got so much history. It'd be a shame for this place to go. It's important not only to the community around here, but to the paranormal world. You know, so many people have investigated it, so many future generations of investigators are going to want to investigate it.
The Ancient Ram Inn is a national treasure. It's a piece of history that needs to be preserved. Not more so for the ghost hunters who keep coming here, but I think historically the building is a fantastic location. You can feel the energy as you walk in. It's a building that's had an awful lot of life, good and bad, over its many, many years of existence, and it's a building that does need looking after.
The Ancient Ram remains a listed building, so it won't be disappearing anytime soon. And with a past so dark, the future looks bright.
John has left a legacy with the Ancient Ram Inn, and I know Caroline, his daughter, is doing a fantastic job in keeping that legacy going. She's keeping the building open, and we still get ghost hunters coming down here looking for the spirits that inhabit these walls.
I love it like my dad did. I feel a bit like Indiana Jones. I'm kind of on a voyage of discovery. I want to find out so much more about it, like my dad did. I'm fascinated by the history and the stories and the things these walls could tell if only they could speak. It would be amazing.
Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, a medieval castle once home to a bloodthirsty clan.
If you've got people being thrown into dungeons, you imagine the actual emotional anxiety that they're going to go through. It would obviously have a massive effect on the energy levels that are absorbed within the fabric of the building.
Murder and torture were a daily occurrence in the aptly named Bloody Chapel.
The O'Carrolls invited McMahons back here to be paid, and they held a banquet up in the Bloody Chapel. But when they got them up there, they poisoned all 29 of them.
Many of those unholy characters still haunt this historic stronghold.
What happened to me here is something that I'll never forget. It scared me that how much power they can have over you.
In the Irish county of Offaly stands an imperious fortress. Once home to a family of brutal warriors, the building is now inhabited by a bevy of terrifying ghosts. Tales of bloodshed and slaughter, Leap Castle wouldn't look out of place in a Hollywood fantasy world. But the stories of death and torture here are very much real. Sean Ryan has owned this medieval stronghold for over 25 years.
We were just lucky. It came up at a time when there was nobody interested in it. It was very cheap. I had loads of energy, and I just fancied having a go at it. And that's how it came about. But we're delighted we did. We loved the place.
During his time at Leap, Sean has learned to live with his ghostly lodgers.
There are lots of spirits in the house. They don't interfere with us or make life difficult. They let us know they're here. And we live alongside that.
Sean often hosts paranormal evenings for ghost hunters from around the world. Warren Coates from Northern Ireland makes regular visits from across the Irish border.
It took a bit of persuasion to get him to allow us into the castle, but obviously Sean, being the gentleman that he is, let us in, and right from the word go, there was just things happening. It was like getting a cloak of energy just put around you as soon as you come down into it. About a couple of weeks after that, there was myself and another 2 group members came down, and up in the chapel at the top, we had stones thrown at us. And again, to us, it was just trying to draw attention. You know, people sort of freak out and think, oh, there's something trying to possess us or trying to harm us. Things they got are normally the spirit, just trying to draw attention.
Warren works alongside fellow paranormal enthusiast Neil McMenamin.
First time I was overwhelmed because it's such a big hype for this building, and you're so excited and you're expecting so much. But it took 2 or 3 goes in this building before I got what I wanted, what I got out of it.
Neil and Warren have captured many EVPs during their investigations at Leap Castle.
EVP stands for electronic voice phenomena. It's a way of capturing ghost voices or disembodied voices, normally using a digital audio recorder or a cassette recorder.
Please make a noise for us now. Oh, God.
I've been to tons of locations and things happen. You hear noises, you hear bangs, doors close, multiple different things happen. This place affects you emotionally, so I don't know how to explain that. I can explain all the other ones, but here just messes with your brain.
Please make a noise for us now. Oh, God.
And I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to protect myself from being that way, because it did scare me.
The small stronghold in County Offaly, Ireland, has stood proudly for at least 600 years.
Leap Castle is located right in the sort of heart of Ireland, the Irish countryside, and was apparently built sometime between the 13th and the 14th century. And quite early on had come into the ownership of the O'Carroll clan, who were a notorious clan of the area who supposedly had kept a very sort of bloodthirsty reign of power over the castle.
They didn't emerge down here really as a clan. They did so up where the border now is with the north. But way back in the 9th century, they were so troublesome, they were driven out and they moved down through Ireland. Eventually came on this country, which was ruled by a clan known as the O'Bannons. But the O'Carrolls very quickly took over, and the O'Bannons became like a sub-tribe of theirs and lived back on the Slieve Mountains.
The fearsome O'Carroll clan remained at Leap until 1659.
Then at some point it came into the hands of the Derby family sometime in the 1600s. And there's one woman of the Derby family who apparently brought evidence of potential hauntings at the castle to the public attention.
The Derbys lived here then until 1922. It was bought and sold then many times during the 1900s until it came up again in 1991. And that's when then we, in probably a little fit of madness, decided we'd buy it. Early 94 then I started the restoration, albeit I've slowed down a little bit now because the madness is over. But we have enough space to live, so that's fine for us.
Under Sean's stewardship, Leap Castle has thrived.
The history alone, places like this need to be kept and restored, and it's good with the paranormal world because it keeps, see like the money produced like doing the fentanyl here, that brings in a ton of money that we can use to restore. Then we help Sean restore the building and keeps it up to date and stuff and all, and keeps more people visiting from all around the world because this building is known all around the world. It's just an amazing building in general, so it is.
It was the history alone that first persuaded paranormal investigator Ray Mullen to visit Leap.
The very first time I came here, we actually came on a day trip. You know, we just came to have a look at the castle, and we actually were staying in a near castle, Kinnity Castle, and we were really intrigued by it. There was like a feeling as you walk in that door. And we decided we'd like to stay the night here, you know. So we had the group set up at that stage. So we said, okay, we'll give it a go and see what it's like. And the very first time we stayed here, we were scared because we'd heard so much about the castle. There was a few things happened that we couldn't explain, noises and stuff that we were amazed by.
Certainly we have had smells up in the gallery room upstairs where a real strong sort of disgusting smell would have wafted across, and then a split second later the smell's gone, you know, and you also get that drop in temperature.
Many believe that activity like this is all down to an unworldly inhabitant of Leap Castle.
Elementals are what I would class as low-level entities, basically. They're not human, they've never been human, they've never walked the earth as a human, hence why the elemental name is given. The elemental that's supposedly in Leap Castle is classed as a figure, but it's also accompanied by the smell of rotting flesh, and people say that this is more of a demonic entity within Leap Castle rather than, obviously, a positive energy.
Now, it sounds horrific and all that, and it was written about by eminent people at the time who stayed here and experienced it, and I'd have no cause to doubt them.
Stories of the elemental date back centuries.
Elementals are very common in folklore, particularly in sort of Irish folkloric mythology. Talk of fairies and the creatures of the country and hidden realms. We sort of see them cross into ghost stories because they have properties that what we think of as traditional ghosts might share, and you know, some people have even suggested that what we take to be a ghost is actually an elemental. That's sort of a whole different thing in itself.
I believe that they reside on a different plane than us, within our plane, but not to where we could see them or be a part of their world. And from what I know of elementals, the one in Lepcastle was conjured, was brought through in a negative way to do negative things.
One group of ghost hunters decided to fight negativity with negativity at Lepcastle and captured a disembodied voice on camera.
I mean, this is your place. You're supposed to be the boss here. Seems like you're getting your face licked here, man. Just like...
In this particular audio recording, you can hear a clear no response. Now, the investigator is provoking and trying to get the spirit to interact, communicate, and respond, but the response is quite clear and it's whispered, and there is a definite no there.
I've seen it be used as a tactic to try to provoke spirit to get them to communicate with you, but I really just think it pisses off the spirit. I mean, I'm sure you get what you're looking for in terms of provoking the spirit, but I think it's a very dangerous game to play, but I guess it works for some people.
Anger and negativity are two strong feelings that run deep at Lepcastle. Years of bloodshed and torture have left a legacy of tyrannical spirits. Lepcastle in the rural Irish county of Offaly has dominated the picturesque landscape for 600 years. The family most synonymous with this stronghold is the brutish O'Carroll clan, who defended the land around them by any means necessary throughout the 16th century. One particular story from 1592 reads like a plotline from a Hollywood fantasy drama. The O'Carrolls hired a neighbouring tribe, the McMahons, to act as mercenaries for them. After helping the O'Carrolls train for battle, a feast was planned to celebrate.
So they invited McMahons back here to be paid, and they held a banquet up in the bloody chapel for them. But when they got them up there, they poisoned all 29 of them. They poisoned their wine. The experts would say the only reason is they didn't want to pay them. There is an account written by a Father Gleeson saying that on the night then they went crazy because they started cutting the heads off the McMahons and they kicked them out the windows of the top and made footballs out of them around the barn.
The bloody chapel has been known to leave a lasting impression on visiting ghost hunters.
I've been here 4 times, so I have, and it's an amazing location, so it is. It affects your emotions, something shocking. It is a total different feeling. It's hard to explain, but it wipes you, it exhausts you, it's tiring. It's enjoyable, it's an amazing location.
It's only when you're here on your own, at night time, when things generally happen. Some people say it's ridiculous. It only happens at night time. It's just I think the reason for that is because you're on your own. There's not many distractions going on.
Warren Coates remembers spending the night in the chapel.
We walked into the chapel, and over at the far side, just when you turn, you walk into the actual chapel itself. There's a doorway at the left-hand side of it. And I was aware of a figure standing in the doorway, but I thought, I suppose in my naivety, I thought it was like a dummy or something had Sean had set up just for added sort of fear factor. We walked into the room, sat the stuff down, I looked over and the figure was gone. And I never said anything to one of the other group members. I could have sworn there was somebody standing, there was a man standing over there. And we thought it was Sean's wife or his daughter, and then we found out there was nobody down here. We actually went into that room and there was nobody at all there. But I say, you'll be standing here and you hear the noises, you hear the doors rattling, you hear the chairs rattling on the stone flagons, and you hear the footsteps up above as well.
Warren's fellow paranormal team member, Neil McMenamin, had a terrifying experience in the unholy chapel.
I don't know why I went off my own, but I just went off for a wee walk. So I just had a wee look around, and I worked my way up the bloody chapel, and everyone's downstairs having fun, eating, all chilling out. And I got upstairs and I came in here, and I remember I think it was nearly an hour went by and no one came looking for me. didn't even notice I was gone, and it was just getting dark, so it was. I was just standing and just looking about, and there was black shadows floating about here and there, kept outside my eyes, kept catching them. So I did, and I was calling out. Something overcame me. I started working my way towards the window. Something was telling me, I'll be okay if I jump. I'll be okay. I know it sounds a bit crazy, so it does, but I must have been standing there for a good 20 minutes, looking, thinking I could squeeze through that window and looking down at the forest below. Someone was telling me, you'll be fine. You're not going to get hurt. You're going to jump. It'll be 100% fine. Nothing's going to happen to you. And lucky enough, one of the other staff members came up the stairs and called me, and I just snapped out of it. So I did whatever I was in, and it sort of freaked me out. It's terrified me of this bloody chapel, because I don't really want to stand around here on my own. You know, if I'm ever up here again, I'll be up here with people.
So occasionally we might hear of a ghost sighting or an interaction with a ghost that involves the sensation of having been taken over by the spirit, or, you know, in a way possessed by the apparent spirit. And it's certainly not restricted to Leap Castle. It could be that something in all the history and the sort of the drama and emotion of these stories, and then being at the location, I think can sometimes sort of people can maybe embody something of that through the atmosphere of the building and the history.
I think if you're up here on your own, there's a good chance that you could have something that pushes you to do things you don't want to do.
Paranormal expert Jo Lockwood was also affected by something in the Bloody Chapel when she paid a visit to Leap Castle.
It's a gravel floor. You've got to really be careful where you're standing, because one failed move, you would be out the window. And all of a sudden I felt a wave of emotion come over me, and it was like I was spinning on the inside of what I would perceive to be a vortex or a portal. And I felt like I was spinning round. And as I came to, I was stood right near the window, and one of the people who I was with actually said to me, "You need to come away from the window." So that leads me to then think maybe there was something there that was asking me to do something and I wasn't aware of it. It's a strange occurrence. It's not something that I want to repeat again, if I'm honest.
Lots of people are susceptible to spirits, and that means that they're able to be taken over by them, especially mediums or those with clairvoyant gifts. So sometimes mediums can channel spirits, but it's very rare for a person that doesn't practice that kind of spirituality to be taken over by a spirit. But when this happens, it's a sometimes scary and very, very dangerous thing.
Going into haunted locations, you come into contact with very powerful spirits that can make you feel the way that they're feeling. We're such sad spirits that make you feel the way that they're feeling. And there have been accounts of people being taken over by spirit. It's not a common thing, but I think it's more common to have a spirit project onto you what they're feeling. It makes more sense than being possessed. And being in such a place of such destruction and terror and torment and torture definitely makes sense that you'd walk in there and you would feel everything that those people felt going through what they did at that building and that location.
Neil will never forget the power of the spirit in the Bloody Chapel.
It's scary how spirits can actually control you and do stuff to you that you don't think. I thought I was no way in hell. I think I'm stronger than them. Do you know what I mean? I never thought they would have as much power on me.
Leap Castle is synonymous with bloodshed, but not all the ghosts at the medieval stronghold are linked to its brutal past.
Emily and Charlotte are two child spirits that are often seen and heard playing at Leap Castle. Both their spirits have been seen playing on the staircase, and it's reported that Emily's scream has been heard as she's fallen from the battlements.
Paranormal investigators believe that Emily fell to her death around the turn of the 17th century.
17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century. 17th century.
Lots of people will see a rope ladder because where she got up to fall, she had to go up on a rope ladder. And quite a lot of people who are touched with things see that rope ladder. Now, what we experience is we hear a scream. We think it could be the scream of her falling. We're not sure. I mean, we can't be 100% sure. But it's the only thing that raises the goosebumps, you know, when we hear that scream. And it's really short. It cuts off like a knife.
Although Emily can be heard falling, it's her companion Charlotte who appears to be suffering an injury.
They're always together. And she has a very badly deformed right leg. It's almost completely turned backwards. And she hobbles around after Emily.
So it makes sense that their spirits would still remain there, because if my brother or my sister, something bad happened to them and I couldn't find them on the other side and they were where they passed away, I would stay with them, just to be together.
Although not much is known about the history of the two children, it's not uncommon to have young spirits inhabiting a haunted building.
There are so many reports from paranormal investigators and eyewitnesses of children being seen and heard playing in various locations across the world. It's common for spirits to stick around in their place of death because of the torture and the torment and the traumatic circumstances that these spirits would have died in.
There's something uniquely tragic about the idea of a child having lost its life, even a child being murdered, and then this sort of sense of them being left alone to haunt a place and being trapped there. I think that plays on all of our emotions.
Child spirits tend to be more mischievous, so you may tend to find that child spirits are more stuck in people's minds because they like to pull things, they like to mess with people's hair, they like to tap you, and things like that, which is intelligence, especially for a child spirit.
Emily and Charlotte are often seen alongside another spirit known as the governess.
We might often hear as well stories of how they're supposedly being looked after by a governess figure or a nanny or some sort of caretaker. And I think that sort of emerges from this idea of the tragic notion that a child is somehow being left behind by their parents. And it's comforting to think that they're actually being looked after by somebody.
She's always around when the two girls are around. But she touches off people. It's like somebody passing you and kind of brushing off you. A lot of our visitors now experience that.
So even in death, if they're intelligent spirits, she would still be looking after them because that was her job in life. So she would still continue to do that in death.
But not all the ghosts at Leap Castle are quite so shy and retiring. Some of them are ready and willing to make themselves heard.
Eat.
County Offaly in Ireland is home to one of the most haunted historic structures in the world, Leap Castle. Ghost hunters regularly make the journey to this rural location in the hope of experiencing the unexplainable.
It's an amazing place. There's definitely something here. Because of the bad past that Leap would have had, maybe it's because so many people have died in Leap Castle that maybe that's the reason. But it's hard to really put your finger on it.
A lot of stuff's happened here, a lot of history. Nearly every person that's came here has been affected in some sort of way.
Ghost hunter Warren Coates has been passionate about the paranormal from a young age.
So I've always had the interest, but I went, this is rubbish, you know, there's no such thing. Went out to try and disprove it wrong, and went to a couple of sort of local, supposedly haunted locations, and changed completely. Witnessed stuff that just could not put away as natural occurrences. Looked at all the possibilities and was left with one thing, it was the paranormal. So since that, I've been a believer.
Eventually, Warren's curiosity led him to Leap.
The first time we came here was around 20 years ago. Long before Leap Castle now is known as one of the most haunted castles in Europe.
During one of his many visits, Warren captured something out of the ordinary.
One of the photographs we have is actually a couple of group members were up in the room with the balconies in where the elementals are supposed to be seen. And one of the group members was actually looking in the mirror, and I was standing at the far side of the table and I took a photograph. A lot of people say that it looks like a face looking back at them.
Could this be the face of one of the many men who lost their lives at Leap Castle?
If you've got people being thrown into dungeons who are going to be left there, you imagine the actual emotional anxiety that they're going to go through, it would obviously have a massive effect on the energy levels that are absorbed within the fabric of the building.
I would say that it's common for a spirit to stick around where they passed on due to it being so abrupt or so horrific that they don't know they're dead. They feel like they can't move on. It really goes back to the story of the spirit and what happened to them.
The bloody history of Leap Castle attracts ghost hunters from far and wide. Ray Mullen and his paranormal team are based in Dublin, but they often travel the 90-mile journey just to carry out investigations here.
We've come to Leap so many times. We've had voices on clips which we just can't explain. It just doesn't make sense.
Ray works alongside his paranormal teammate, Derek Johnston.
I think it's just the history of the bloody chapel that gives this place its reputation and tends all the groups need to come and visit. I just keep you drawn back to the place.
Ray and Derek have perfected a way of capturing the spirits at Leap.
What we do is we set up some cameras, we set up EVPs, and we just talk to see is there anything there and if we get any answers. Most of the time you'd be talking away, having a general chat, and you just hear a voice and maybe in the background when you're listening back. And it's when you least expect it.
There was two of the lads out on the balcony where John grows the grapes, and we were setting up the cameras on the inside, and I was shouting out to Stephen, who's there with us as well, how to hire and lower the cameras. And then we got this EVP that something said, it, and then a laugh, or it could be eat, and a laugh.
Eat.
Derek would listen to a lot of footage. He spends so many hours. It takes a lot of dedication. He sits down, he goes through all the tapes, and you'd get a phone call from Derek to say, I've just heard something I really need you to listen to. This particular clip, there was no female there that night. We're just setting up equipment, and it's like you can hear a female voice. It's like as if she's been watching or something, you know, in the background while we're setting up the equipment.
Eat.
It's saying eat and laughing in like this malevolent, nasty laugh. Sounds like a clear EVP. I would definitely rank that high on the EVP scale.
EVPs like this still excite a seasoned investigator like Derek.
The hair stand up on your neck, to be honest. Because I'm a skeptic as well, so I don't usually believe in all this stuff, but I can't explain it.
Not all spirits know we're here. Some of them are intelligent, some of them are just residual. So those intelligent spirits are able to see us and perhaps interact and communicate with us. But these residual energies, these ghosts, are just moving around their kind of everyday world. They aren't able to see us, they aren't able to hear us or interact with us, but we might well see them or get a glimpse of them in their own world.
On the very same night, Derek kept his recorder rolling.
Shortly after that then, there was another EVP. Within the 3 minutes of that clip, there's another one near the end of it. It's a very faint voice, you probably need earphones to hear it, but it sounds like I had to go past Jesus Christ, or something like that.
In this audio recording, you can hear what sounds like a male voice, and it says something like, I had to go past Jesus Christ. It's definitely a sentence, it's definitely a male voice that's speaking just as the door is squeaking open.
Sometimes you get something that you're like, what was that? I'm gonna have to break that down and, amplify that so I can hear it. And then you have EVPs that are clear as day as this one, that you can hear exactly what they're saying. And I say that's a damn good EVP.
It was a fantastic capture for Derek and Ray.
It used to scare us, this is really, really strange, But now, you sort of get used to it. We wouldn't have had a huge amount of times it's happened. But when it does happen, there is no explanation for it. Where did the device come from? There must be something. So there's something in there that says there is something,
Capturing intelligent spirits on tape can be extremely difficult, and often the responses they give are seemingly random. Is it possible that they're not even aware that they're being contacted?
I don't think it's that they don't know. I think it's that they don't care to know. I believe the afterlife is very much what you perceive it to be, what you want it to be. But as I've come to know is they're aware of time, but they're in a timeless place. So how aware of time can they be? So they know that we're there and that we're, still living and on the other side, but I don't think they're like, it's 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Gotta hurry up, it's getting dark outside. I don't think they're aware like that.
Leap Castle has stood in the Irish countryside for almost 600 years, so it's no surprise that there are numerous stories of paranormal occurrences within.
There are reports of an old man seen sat in the fireplace at Leap Castle, but only the top portion of his body is seen. Now, he could well be a residual of energy, a ghost, but the reason why he's only this part of his body is seen is because the floor might be a different level than it was back in the day. So what you're seeing isn't really there, but the building has changed and the structure of the room has changed so much that we're only seeing this portion of his body.
When Jo Lockwood visited Leap, she felt the presence of this mysterious man.
I was sat in the fireplace because it was really, really cold when we went there. Leap Castle is situated quite far back and it's quite high up, and once I was in there it was very, very cold because it's all stone, and I was actually drawn to a seat, and I actually asked the gentleman who actually owns the castle, I said, is there a gentleman who sits here? And he said, yeah, you're right.
It's hard to pin him down to a time, because we don't know how he's clad or anything. But he doesn't seem to be aware of us. He often sits just here in this corner. He seems to be staring out that window there and doesn't seem to be aware of us at all.
There are many theories about why the apparition of the elderly man is not complete.
I don't know why only half of his body shows up. I don't know if that's the imprint in time or if he had no legs or if that's how spirit comes across. But I would count it as residual energy because he's seen at the same place every time in front of the fireplace. He really doesn't try to communicate with anybody. He really doesn't say anything. He's just seen. So I would say he's residual energy. That was a prominent place, an important place to this gentleman. That was his time in front of his fireplace.
When we hear of ghosts that are disembodied and only partially visible, people tend to think of this as representing one of two things, which is either that when they originally existed, the place that they sat on or where they used to walk was sort of below where it is now. You can't sort of see below the floor, so that might be one explanation. Another being that if it's a residual ghost, whatever's keeping it here is starting to wear out over time and it's sort of vanishing.
With such a vast treasure trove of spirits, it's no surprise that Leap Castle continues to excite paranormal experts from far and wide. Leap Castle is one of the most haunted locations in Ireland. A history of bloodshed and torture has left a whole host of paranormal energy within the building.
I suppose we kind of want to associate spirits with places like Leap Castle because of their sort of quite dark and mysterious and sort of traumatic history. It sort of really captures the imagination of what we associate the haunted place to be.
In the castle's most notorious room, the Bloody Chapel, the apparition of Father Thaddeus O'Carroll has been seen on many occasions.
It's quite common for the spirit of monks or priests to be seen haunting locations. In this particular case at Leap Castle, the priest was murdered by his own brother in the Bloody Chapel.
Thaddeus was one of the members of the barbaric O'Carroll clan who once ruled over Leap Castle. Unlike in so many tribes, the leadership did not pass down to the son of the chieftain. Instead, the elders would select a shortlist of candidates and decide between them. When Mulrooney O'Carroll died in 1592, Thaddeus and his brother Tig were in line to take over.
Two of them were up for chieftaincy at the time, and one of them, Thaddeus, was a priest. Tig was the other one. Thaddeus started a mass one Sunday before Tig arrived, and Tig reckoned it was the worst insult ever paid him, and he killed him. But of course he was getting rid of the opposition, and he did, and he became chieftain.
Paranormal experts believe that Thaddeus still roams the chapel in search of revenge.
As in Japanese folklore, the sort of spirit is known as a reikon, and you can actually get a very specific ghost called a yurei. So a yurei is a ghost made specifically because the spirit was created through a violent act. And so in that moment of violence or heightened emotion, the spirit transforms into a ghost called a yurei, which then will come back to haunt whoever they consider responsible for their death or creating that moment.
But with Thaddeus being a holy man, it's possible that he's not out for vengeance and perhaps just wanders through the chapel he once called home.
So his ghost still remains there, which makes sense because he might be protecting it. He may be trying to warn people to not go there if it's a bad place, if it's a dark place, because there's just a lot of heavy darkness surrounded around that energy. So maybe the priest is sticking around to bring light and love and to maybe keep the darkness at bay, like a protector, like there to protect and oversee and make sure that there is peace brought to the land. I don't think he's stuck. I think he's there at his own will to do good.
While searching for Thaddeus, paranormal investigator Warren Coates saw the apparition of another religious figure in the chapel.
There was one, there's an oldish man. We've seen a couple of caves up there, and he looks like a stereotypical monk that walks about, but he would sort of hide. If you're over at the far side where Liblade is, he sort of hides over in the background, and he would sort of stay there. And then when you walk away, it's as if he's following you throughout the castle, keeping an eye on just what you're doing.
We tend to hear a lot of stories about religious ghosts, or particularly in the United Kingdom and Ireland, ghosts of the Christian faith. We frequently hear of monks being sighted near religious locations or places that have been sanctified. And I guess the reason for this is that the association with the ascension to heaven, but only being possible once you've had a proper burial. So for any religious figure to have not been buried properly or to have been murdered, to have been killed unlawfully, would somehow disturb their spirit, and therefore that's why we might see them still hanging around these buildings.
Religious ghosts are actually quite common, and it might well be because they've died perhaps in such traumatic circumstances that there is this kind of comparison to their good, fulfilling life and the way they actually perished. So their spirits are trapped in this ether, in this plane.
You don't even have to be inside the Bloody Chapel to experience the ghosts within.
Across the valley, and they've rung us to say there's a light in the chapel again, but by the time we get the call and get up, it's gone, So we actually haven't seen it ourselves, but they do see it, and they ring us.
I've actually seen those lights firsthand. I went to Lep Castle back in June of 2016 and went along with 2 other paranormal investigators, and it was a little bit strange, to say the least.
Light anomalies have been seen in the Bloody Chapel quite frequently. Now this is common because spirits use energy, including light energy, to try and manifest and show themselves. There was a massacre that took place in the Bloody Chapel, that these spirit energies are still residing there, and they are trying to form into something and give themselves some kind of body to show themselves, and that light anomaly is quite a common occurrence.
We often hear reports when people talk about strange sightings, particularly possible ghosts or apparitions. You commonly hear stories also of strange lights being seen at the same time, or something glowing. It might happen at night time and there's not a light source around. So, the fact that this is something that happens at Lep Castle apparently would be quite a common occurrence.
Lep Castle is a fascinating place that constantly simmers with paranormal energy. It's no wonder that the people who visit feel so enchanted by the place.
What happened to me here is something that I'll never forget, and it's something that I don't really talk about because it's a bit of a touchy subject sort of thing, and it scared me how much spirits can do, how much power they can have over you.
The castle itself is in good hands, and there's no reason why it couldn't stand for another 600 years.
What Sean's done here is amazing, and when Sean took us over, it was just a shell, and he's done all the work, and that's why he is so accepted by the spirit energies that live here. But there's a history. If Lep Castle had been knocked down years ago, there would have been a field here, it would have been somebody's big mansion house built here now, and the history would have been gone. The energies would have still been here, stories would have still been here, and all the folklore would have still been here. But once you lose place, I guess it's gone forever. You can certainly build a replica, but it's not good enough.
Even if it wasn't haunted, or even if it was nothing, whatever was going on here, it would still be an amazing building to come and visit, take photographs, bring your kids. It is an amazing building, so it is. It's really important to the haunted world.
It continues to be a passion project for Sean, who is maintaining the legacy and the legend of Lep Castle.
I'd probably never finish it, unless I live till I'm 100 or something. That doesn't mean I won't stop. I've slowed down a good bit. The mad rush is over, but then we have enough space to live, and that's okay. But we're still working all the time at it.
Sean has done everything that he possibly could to keep the place going. He keeps the history of it alive. It's like when I come here, I try and imagine what it would have been like to live here maybe 600 years ago, and it would have been quite a different place. It's an amazing castle.
Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, nestled deep in the Essex countryside, is one of the UK government's best-kept secrets.
It's just a wooden building which looks very, very small, but as soon as you get past those doors, it is miles of underground tunnels and secret passageways.
A subterranean relic of the Cold War, the vast secret nuclear bunker at Kelvedon Hatch comes alive with the energy of the dead.
Kelvedon Bunker is, in my opinion, one of the world's most scariest places. It's teeming with different energies, everything from shadow people to full-bodied apparitions.
Buried 125 feet below the ground, only the brave managed to spend a night here.
It's a really creepy place, and it feels like you've been watched all the time, like you're not alone.
That chair's moving. That chair's moving.
Oh my God.
In the small village of Kelvedon Hatch in Essex, a quaint, unassuming cabin sits in the woods. But this is not an idyllic British cottage. Deep below the foundations lies one of the UK's best-kept secrets. For 40 years, Kelvedon Hatch was the location for the British government's secret nuclear bunker. With the threat of Cold War hanging over the country, there was a real worry that the USSR would launch a missile at any moment, aimed straight at the UK. Decommissioned by the Ministry of Defence in 1992, Kelvedon Hatch is now teeming with paranormal energy. The haunted bunker is owned and operated by Mike Parrish, who has opened it up to the public as a tourist attraction.
Well, obviously, we've got a bunker in the middle of Essex because it's the London bunker. It was where some of central government would have come had there been an atomic war. It was built here because this is the furthest south that the Ice Age came. And so whereas the rest of the land around here is London clay, we've actually got free-draining soil. And so it happened to be nice free-draining soil on a hill, far enough away from London to be safe.
Originally built as an RAF defence base in 1952, as the Cold War heated up throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s, it became the unofficial safe house for the British government.
It took them a mere 7 months to build it, from start to finish, which was quite remarkable. It would take you that long now to get planning permission. But obviously there was a bit of a panic going on.
When you first come across the bunker, it presents itself like a small bungalow in a wooded area. But going inside, you soon find that there's a 100-yard tunnel leading you deeper and deeper into the hillside behind. The bunker underneath itself is actually 125 feet below the ground.
It was built to hold 600 people, but by the mid-80s, they'd whittled that down to 450.
The bunker remains frozen in time, still poised and ready to rescue officials and members of the public in its various rooms, including a dormitory and a sick bay.
There are so many different rooms in the nuclear bunker. All these rooms house different operational departments. There's also a BBC radio room that would be used in the event of a war to broadcast live from that particular location.
Once you're actually on the inside of Kelvedon Hatch, it's just a rabbit warren of tunnels. It is a huge place and it's very easy for somebody to get lost on the inside of there, but the location is amazing for a paranormal investigation.
The bunker has fascinated paranormal experts for years, with reports of it being home to a whole host of spirits.
One of the explanations as to why the bunker might be haunted is that a burial ground was disturbed when they constructed it. And it's a very common sort of cultural trope that if anybody's body is not correctly buried or has been disturbed after it was buried, then it leads to a discomfort in later life.
They unearthed human remains. I would say that that is probably why they're experiencing the paranormal activity that they are. When you disrupt a gravesite, ancient or not, it's gonna riff the spirits that you're unearthing, and especially how you're dealing with their remains, which they weren't dealt with in a respectful manner. So I'm assuming spirit wouldn't be very happy with them.
Kelvedon Hatch also has reports of various other entities and demonic spirits that manifest themselves here due to the fact that people have conjured these spirits and have done Ouija boards and seances over many, many years.
I picked up on a number of people. There is a female there. She likes to sing and she likes to make herself known, and there's quite a lot of floral perfume as well that follows this lady about.
I've never myself experienced it. No ghost has looked me in the eye. So no, I haven't seen them, but lots of people who've come down here are quite genuine when they say they have seen something. And it's not for me to dispute that. It's just that I'm not on the same wavelength, obviously, or not prepared to admit them into my mind, but others perhaps are.
One ghost hunter who has spent more time at Kelvedon Hatch than most is Mickey Gokul. He stumbled upon the paranormal secrets of the Cold War relic completely by accident.
The secret nuclear bunker here at Kelvedon Hatch, for us, was a training ground, a place where we would take our paranormal investigators to get used to an environment, get used to the dark, no ambient sounds from outside. It meant that none of the equipment would be interfered with. For example, the what they call the ghost box. It uses radio frequencies, so we wouldn't experience the external radio frequencies, we would just experience whatever's happening inside. So for us, it's a training ground, but it proved to be more than that. I've been here 3 times with paranormal teams. On every single occasion, we've had some kind of activity.
Along with many of his own first-hand experiences, Mickey has heard all of the rumours, myths and legends that swirl around the bunker.
We hear so many stories, but certainly there's been reports of a lady that's been present as well. The rumours are that the lady was disturbed when this building was being constructed. Apparently the burial ground, which was in the area at the time, was disturbed, and she says to haunt and sometimes terrorise people that are here.
The restless spirit has been seen on many occasions by tourists and ghost hunters alike.
One of the ghosts that people have reported seeing at Kelvedon Hatch is known as the tall old lady, who presents as very elderly looking but also freakishly tall.
There have been reports by eyewitnesses of her moving around in the shadows of the former nuclear bunker.
I would have to say that she's there either trying to seek justice for herself or just make her presence known. Once you unearth human remains, and if you don't lay them properly to rest and have respect, because things do happen, some graves are unmarked, so on and so forth, spirit is affected by that. Just because you can't see things doesn't mean that they're not affected.
The unsettled woman is just one of a number of terrifying ghosts that keep many people away, but also send many people flocking to mysterious Kelvedon Hatch. In the village of Kelvedon Hatch in Essex, a clandestine bunker is hidden below the ground. The unused atomic fallout shelter now plays host to a bevy of spirits. But you'd never know it by looking at the unassuming entrance.
It's just a wooden building which looks very, very small, but as soon as you get past those doors, it is miles of underground tunnels and secret passageways. you will get lost inside there.
The entrance tunnel that leads down to the main bunker is haunted by one of the most often seen ghosts of Kelvedon.
There have been reports by many visitors to Kelvedon Bunker of seeing a woman in full military uniform, often as real as you and I. This female officer has also allegedly been telling people to get out, and she speaks to these people as clearly as we are now.
Many people who visit Kelvedon don't even get as far as the bunker, chased away by this fearsome woman. Keen ghost hunter Sadie Forth has first-hand experience of this.
We started off the night's investigation down here in the tunnel, and we walked up to the bottom of the tunnel behind me. It was me and my two lady friends, and we were the only people here in the bunker all night long. I got out my night vision camera to start filming to see if anything was here, and it looked like there was a figure at the other end of the tunnel.
There, can you see that? Tall and dark. Yeah. With a face.
Yeah. A dark silhouette, a shadow type figure, which was quite frightening to look at. And I zoomed in on the camera to see if it was still there, and it was.
I'm not picking anything up on camera. I don't think I am anyway.
And it was just really quite frightening, actually, to think that there was something watching us from the other end of the tunnel. We were here on our own.
So the sighting of the military woman is quite interesting in a sort of hauntological sense, which is this idea that there are futures that have been lost to us where things took a different path. The idea that maybe in another parallel universe, a Cold War did fully break out, or there was a nuclear war, and perhaps this woman exists in a different sort of space almost.
As Sadie and her friends ventured on through the tunnel, their night took another terrifying twist.
As we were sort of halfway through the tunnel, sort of near to this end, a lady's voice came through really scarily and told us to get out. But it wasn't a nice get out, it was a really frightening get out, which really terrified the living daylights out of all three of us, to the point where we did want to get out, but we were scared to get out because the only way out was past the voice that we'd heard come from this end of the tunnel. So we needed to find out where the voice had come from.
What's quite interesting about the reports of the military woman is that she talks directly to the people that have seen her, which would suggest that if she were dead, she doesn't know that she is, or that she's in fact alive but existing in a different sort of time and space to us. So she is very much not a ghost in the sense that she is the apparition of a dead person, but is a fully autonomous person in her own place.
It really set the tone for the rest of the night that we were here and completely frightened us. But as we were going back, it's like we were peeking around the walls to see if there was something there, because we were really terrified. But there's no explanation for it. We did eventually come back down to work out where this voice come from, what it could be, a possible explanation for it. And the only explanation I could come up with was that it come from this tunnel speaker. It was like it was something here not wanting us here. I don't think it was a warning because it would have been more friendly. I think it was quite menacing.
Deep down inside the vast nuclear bunker at Kelvedon Hatch, you'll find some of the most unnerving spirits.
So one of the types of apparition that have been reported at Kelvedon Hatch are shadow people, which are frequently occurring dark shadowy shapes that are seen at the periphery of people's vision.
Seeing shadow figures at Kelvedon Hatch is probably the most common phenomenon reported there. And I think the reason for that is because this place is so very dark and it's underground, and the fact that it might well have been built on a burial site gives rise to the many different spirit forms that may well dwell still at this property.
Some say they're time travelers, some say they're evil spirits. I've come into contact with shadow figures that haven't scared me. I believe it's very much when you're investigating or you're in a haunted space, you use your body as a tool. So it's how the shadow person makes you feel. Obviously, you're going to be unnerved because there's a shadow figure standing in front of you. And your initial thing is it's black, it's dark, it's going to be scary.
Ghost hunters come from all around the world to hunt down the ominous shadow people. Paranormal investigator Alan Robson recalls his first visit to the bunker.
We walked through the door, and the first thing I felt when I come down here, you weren't allowed to come in here. And it was that eeriness which you get, which you think someone's watching you and saying, look, you're not allowed in here, get out. When we started walking around here, it just got more weird feeling. It felt like you're being watched and no one wants you in here. It's private, you're not supposed to know about this place.
Alan and his fellow paranormal team members focused their search for the shadow people on the communications room.
Well, in this room, we came in far end down there. So we decided to set a couple of cameras up down there. We put some detector lights on these tables here. When we were down there with the cameras doing a bit of an investigation, we had these lights go off on these tables here. And we got to this spot, it was like we had all of us got a tingly feeling.
So often when people report seeing shadow people, the sightings come with a sense of malignancy. So there's a feeling that these entities or whatever they are out to cause harm.
They feel dizzy, they get headaches, they feel tingly. I would say that that's caused from the energy that they're experiencing from being around certain spirits. In this instance, because remains were unearthed, I would say that these spirits aren't happy. I'd say that they're not at rest, and that's why you're getting shadow people.
Both scared and excited, Alan and his team lay in wait.
All the lights were off, and we waited for anything to happen out here. We started getting noises, things moving out here, which just needed to be really quiet for this to happen. We couldn't come out of that room because we knew it would stop. And that's when we could see the shadow passing past the windows in that room. And this happened about 3 or 4 times. We know no one was in this room. We were all in that room together. So whatever the person was that was walking around here, it wasn't alive.
Paranormal expert Becca has experienced it too.
I've seen shadow pass through solid, like I didn't see face. It looked like a mask to me. Like, you know those old like Chinese masks where it's just like the face for the whole, and it was soft, I knew it was a woman, like full on wispy apparition.
For somebody who's never experienced something and actually sees a shadow person or sees a full manifestation of a person, that would be quite scary. But sometimes when you see a manifestation, it's only for a split second. And then when you look back, there's nobody there. I think that's what scares people even more.
Intrigued to see whether the cameras had picked up any of the shadowy figures, Alan and his team pressed play.
When we went back on the footage of the camera that was set out here, we had the dark shadow walk past that camera twice, which to me looks like a woman. Military, I don't know, but definitely a woman. Looks like she's got her hair tied up or hat, and it looks like she's carrying something. And she's going from this end, where we felt it cold, to the other side of this room, and then disappearing about there. Twice this happened. So this must have been the figure we were seeing, or the shadow, it was casting the shadow over on that room, which done it twice, but we see it more times than this, but the camera caught it twice.
The video footage clearly shows a shadow moving past in one of the rooms of the Kelvedon bunker. And it is quite possible that this is a shadow figure and one of the many spirits that have been reportedly haunting this location.
I would definitely say that it is very possible that it was spirit trying to communicate. Again, investigators say, you know, show me that you're here, make your presence known. That doesn't always mean that spirit's gonna do that right in front of you. They may go to the next room, there's a camera, and walk by it, or not even think of it. That's just how they manifested themselves. So I definitely think that's spirit.
Many experts who have ventured deep down into the bunker at Kelvedon Hatch have seen the shadowy spirits.
One of my colleagues actually saw what he believes to be a shadow figure himself. It was lurking around just next door to the BBC broadcast room, and as it moved between the rooms, he saw a physical figure. He saw something that had an outline that was darker than the dark of the room itself.
Because it's absolutely pitch black inside Kelvedon, 9 times out of 10 a spirit would be black, and they usually would find that they walk past a laser grid or they'll walk past a piece of light and they'll pick something up that way.
Alan will never forget his encounter with the dark side of Kelvedon Hatch.
This figure, you can see it's actually, it's a person. It's not just a shadow. You know, it's got depth to it. And it's kind of, it's not walking, it's kind of hovering along. It's just not normal the way it looks. If it was a shadow, it'd be all bendy, all over the walls and everything. And from that to start from this area where you get the tingling, that makes sense, doesn't it? That's why I believe this is an actual shadow figure, as they call it. And they're not very easy to catch. But that night we caught one, yeah.
The terrifying shadow figures at Kelvedon darken its endless corridors. Not all spirits can be seen, though. Some make contact in other ways.
Stop the device, Charles.
Oh my God.
In the woods on the outskirts of a small village in Essex lies a secret nuclear bunker, an unused Cold War base concealed from the British public for 40 years.
Kelvedon Hatch is hidden 125 feet below ground. From the front and the outside, it looks like a cottage, but actually, in the depths of this building are caverns of rooms and spiralling staircases that move throughout the vicinity.
The seemingly endless corridors below are now home to numerous paranormal beings, one of which is known to defy physics.
On my first visit to the bunker, we were very dubious about poltergeist activity. But on the second visit, we witnessed one of the dummies that are on the bunk bed. We witnessed one of those actually coming off, and we were unable to account for it. So yeah, I would say there is some poltergeist activity here.
The word poltergeist is the German word for noisy ghost or noisy spirit. There are various different theories on poltergeist. Poltergeist is said to be active, intelligent, and generally mischievous spirit forms. They are able to throw objects, move objects, interact with the living, and will cause mayhem and distress anywhere that they're found.
People who claim to have been haunted by poltergeists have reported being hit or scratched or have had things thrown at them. And some reports of poltergeists have been particularly dramatic. You know, they'll have beds or cabinets, quite heavy objects thrown about the house.
Some poltergeists can even make a physical connection from the spiritual to the real world.
I've known people who are hardened skeptics, have their own personal experiences of being touched, and I've also had people who are very, very open, who've experienced absolutely nothing. So it depends whether that spirit kind of takes a liking to you or not. I've had somebody follow me around a place and touch my leg and give me kisses, and that's quite unnerving when you actually have that, because it's kind of a little bit strange.
I would say it would be energy from spirit. I'd say it'd be a spirit that's able to harness or manifest a lot of energy. To be able to move things or touch you, like I said, that takes a lot of energy. A low-level spirit isn't gonna come up to you and you wouldn't feel their poke or that they're even near you. High energy, you're gonna feel that dizziness, you're gonna feel that tingly, they're gonna affect you physically.
The poltergeist activity at Kelvedon Hatch is believed to be down to one man in particular.
So there is a story about the construction of the bunker which involves one of the workers. Apparently he'd been laying concrete at one of the lower floors.
And so it was pumped into the walls, and it was a day and night job so that they didn't get a day break in the concrete that would then make it weak. Rumour has it that one morning they turned up and the foreman was missing, and his gloves were on the side of the wall where the pump was pumping the cement in, and he was never seen again.
His hat was seen floating on top of the cement in the morning, and his spirit is said to haunt Kelvedon Hatch to this day.
The assumption being that he might be responsible for the poltergeist activity.
One paranormal team who investigated Kelvedon captured some of the amazing poltergeist activity on camera.
The video footage shows a team of investigators calling out, asking the spirits to show themselves or to move an object, and as he pans around, you slightly see this chair moving very, very suddenly.
Oh, that chair's moving.
That chair's moving.
That chair is moving. Oh my God. Thank you to the spirit that is moving the chair for us. You're doing really well.
It's quite possible that a spirit was in there trying to intelligently communicate with the team, and by moving that chair, it was definitely getting their attention.
Spirit communicates in many different ways. Unless you're using a ghost box or doing an EVP session, you're not going to be able to hear them. So you're going to say, move something, show me that you're here, and I believe that Spirit chose to move the chair. Say, hey, I'm over here.
The moving chair at Kelvedon is strong evidence of spirit interaction, but experts remain torn on how to define poltergeist activity.
There are sort of two main ideas about what a poltergeist is, and one being that it's a spirit, a malicious spirit that has, for one reason or other, attached itself onto one person, or can often be linked to a specific place. So, for example, a family might move into a home and they find that they are being haunted by a poltergeist because the spirit of the previous owner still considers that place to belong to them. Another idea put forward as to what a poltergeist might be was devised in the mid-19th century, which was that it could be psychokinetic energy that has been projected from an individual.
Be it spiritual or psychokinetic energy, also known as telekinesis, the footage is still thrilling for any paranormal enthusiast.
That chair is moving. Oh my God.
It's very much exciting because usually you ask Spirit, show me that you're here, let me know that you're here, whether it's a knock, whether it's, moving this. And they don't command. Like, you can't command Spirit to do what you want. They're not, a parlor trick. So when they do it, it's scary. And then you get the surge of adrenaline through your body, like, oh my God, I just witnessed something supernatural.
One of the most active areas at Kelvedon Hatch is the radio room. Mickey Gokul has been investigating the nuclear bunker for 5 years and experienced one of his most unexplainable happenings here.
Well, this is the communications room here at the secret nuclear bunker. My team arrived into this room and we felt a presence. We felt as if there was energy here that we couldn't explain. Specifically, when we got to this point here, this was the point that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. This is the point where we established a communication with a spirit called Charles. It was quite remarkable because using a simple EMF device, which was handheld, and a lady that we'd never met before sat in a chair right here, and she was surrounded by my team holding night vision equipment, recording equipment, and EMF equipment. Charles, is that you, sir? Can you make that bleep once for yes, please? Thank you.
An EMF device, also known as a K2 meter, is one of the most commonly used tools by any ghost hunter.
They were using a K2 meter, which measures the electromagnetic force field or frequency around you. And spirits are able to use that and manipulate it to give you answers.
Are you going to show yourself to me? Indicate by bleeping this device. Thank you very much.
2 for yes, 1 for no, and the spirit was communicating with him.
The EMF, or electromagnetic field responses, were quite unbelievable.
Would you mind lighting the device if you were happy with the present that you received from Her Majesty the Queen? Thank you very much. I used this filing cabinet as an experiment to see whether this spirit could actually hear what we were doing, could hear sounds. I tapped 3 times, and there was a response on the EMF meter. I tapped 3 times, and very quickly followed by 2. And again, there was an immediate response. That's when I knew it could hear us. I'm going to knock. I want you to replicate the knock on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that is good.
There was the delay in your knock as well.
Yeah, there was.
3. Oh, yeah.
And this is where I felt the most energy. I felt, standing in this spot here, there was an energy, but I couldn't tell what type of energy it was. I didn't know if it was a male or female, but then it dawned on me we were making contact with someone or something using the EMF device. So I asked the question, "Are you here?" And the EMF device started bleeping. Is this where you are? I asked, would you make the EMF device bleep faster? And it did. Bearing in mind the EMF device was 20 feet away, it was bleeping faster and faster and faster until I said stop, and it stopped on demand. Stop the device, Charles.
Oh my God.
I knew that this was the spot where Charles was.
I would say it's a mischievous spirit. How you are in life is very well how you are in death, and you might have a spirit that just likes to be a trickster or is reacting to the things that are being asked by the paranormal team. Are you here? Show me you're here. Like I said, they just don't do things on command.
If your name is Charles, please activate this device and make it go. Just come closer to me, sir. Is your name Charles? Thank you very much.
By speaking to Charles through the EMF device, Mickey was able to find out much more about this enigmatic spirit.
I could feel him. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was here. And through a series of questions, using the EMF device, we were able to ascertain that he worked here, that he wasn't an ancient spirit. He passed away at the age of 50 in 1992 or thereabouts. He also refused to give me his full name, but preferred me referring to him as Charles. This has really changed it for me. This location, this spot, and the spot we were just in with the chair has changed my life.
The one reason why I believe communicating with spirit is important is to hear their story. As an investigator, and I'm sure as why you do what you do, documenting haunted locations, is to get down to the bottom of the story. Why is this haunted? Why are we here? Why are these spirits here? That's very important, and you can only do that so much without communication with spirit.
And there are so many more stories waiting to be heard. 125 feet under the ground at Kelvedon Hatch. Kelvedon Hatch in Essex is the home of an underground nuclear control base kept secret from the British public for 40 years. Soldiers who served down here during the Cold War would rarely see the light of day.
How long they could stay down here is sort of open to dispute in a way, but it was nominally 3 months. It was as long as their food lasted them. If it had just been a small amount of radiation, the Territorial Army, who were surrounding the outside to keep the public out, would have been sent off to get us more food. In those days, of course, the government had food stocks, so they would have brought them in from the food stock. So it was as long as our food and water lasted us. And we've obviously got water buried underground, we have our own sewage systems, and we're self-contained, and I'll say nominally for 3 months.
But it seems as though some of the people down here have stayed a lot longer. Some have even made contact with paranormal investigators, by way of a spirit box.
A spirit box uses radio frequency in order to generate spirit voices. So a spirit box will scan every single radio frequency in quick succession in order to produce what's called static and white noise, and spirits use this to come through as a spirit voice. You can hear anything on a spirit box. It could be somebody's name, it could be how they passed away, it could be certain numbers of squadrons. It can be absolutely anything that they obviously want to communicate with you. Usual things that we've heard previously is people's names and intelligent answers if we've held up a torch or anything like that and we've asked the question, can you tell us what we've got in our hands, or anything like that. But usually you will find anything that comes through on a spirit box is usually intelligent, so they will answer questions for you.
Ghost hunter Sadie Forth stayed overnight in Kelvedon with 2 of her fellow paranormal enthusiasts. Towards the end of their fright-filled visit, the team picked up the voice of a supernatural being when using their spirit box.
It wasn't anything explicable in our world. It was something just random. It wasn't a recorded voice that was projected to come out at a certain time. It just was there and then, as though it was telling us to get out. It basically terrified the living daylights out of us all. It was me and my 2 lady friends who came here, and we were here all alone all night, and it was really quite frightening.
It's quite common for anyone to be scared during an investigation. I personally do feel fear in some of the places that I visit, but often you have to put that aside and carry on with the job at hand. It's very normal for investigators to feel fear during a paranormal investigation, and on several occasions I have had such a sense of fear and foreboding that I've had to leave the property.
Although some spirits can show themselves as full manifestations, or famously at Kelvedon Hatch as shadow people, others only seem to be able to present as disembodied voices.
There's a lot of different theories on where their spirit can go. I just believe it's a different dimension. I believe they're able to just be at peace and be over on the other side and not be so physically attached to this plane. That's where I believe they go. I'm sure they can come back and forth. They can touch here, because that's where we get good spirits, your family, your friends, the people that come, you know, and watch over you, but they're not stuck here.
Sadie has returned to Kelvedon since her night of frights, but still feels uncomfortable in the 125-foot deep bunker.
It's a really creepy place, and it feels like you've been watched all the time, like you're not alone.
Some experts believe that the ghosts who haunt Kelvedon Hatch may not even be from our own space and time.
It's interesting to think that there have been reports of sightings, ghost sightings at Kelvedon Hatch, considering that no one's actually lived and died in the building. But there's something incredibly powerful about the space, because the idea of a nuclear war for all of us is sort of one of the most terrifying concepts, and the way that the bunker is put together and how it still exists today, it's very easy to sense that something had taken place and that, you know, it had been in operation, and perhaps that in another time and place a nuclear war did occur. And so when you go into the bunker to see it laid out the way that it is, it almost feels like there's an alternative future somewhere where this place had actually been in operation. In a sense, when you're in the bunker, you can intuit the lives of the people that in another world might have lived down there.
This is one of the reasons that paranormal teams still flock to Kelvedon Hatch, all trying to capture something remarkable in a place where they once weren't welcome.
Well, obviously not when the government had it. because people hadn't been down here then. They weren't indeed allowed in here to investigate it. But since we've been open to the public, so they have come down, paranormal groups, and most of them find evidence of paranormal activity of some measure, be it orbs, or be it mediums getting hold of people, or occasionally the odd photograph.
During 2 nights of filming in the bunker, our crew experienced some strange anomalies. Whilst filming, the lights would mysteriously turn themselves on. And the overnight trap cam was triggered in the pitch black when the nuclear facility was completely empty.
People have claimed to have captured orbs in photographs. Perhaps they've gone to investigate an area that's got a reputation for being haunted, and when they receive the photographs back, they find these bright, small spheres in the back of the photograph.
There are many different theories about spirit orbs. Orbs are generally the first manifestations of a spirit entity, normally usually energy or balls of energy with their own kind of signature.
The spirit learns how to manifest in many different ways. There's not one specific way I've seen spirit manifest. So whether it's a little energy ball, whether it's a wispy figure in front of you, whether it's a shadow person, there could be many different reasons.
The secret nuclear bunker at Kelvedon Hatch may have been decommissioned in the early 90s, but it certainly seems that some of its residents are still at home, deep within the subterranean network.
Kelvedon Hatch is one of the more interesting haunted locations in the United Kingdom, since it has never officially been lived in. It sort of retains a very unique atmosphere, unlike many other locations.
Kelvedon Hatch has got activity there, and I would say that there is presences of numerous people there. I also think that there's a significance between the residual haunting and also the intelligent haunting.
Anyone brave enough to explore down here had better come prepared for a fright.
Kelvedon Bunker is, in my opinion, one of the world's most scariest places. It's teeming with different energies, everything from shadow people to full-bodied apparitions and possibly demonic entities.
I would say it rates quite highly because there was only the 3 of us here, so there was no contamination from any other sources here. It is definitely one of the creepiest places I've been to. I have been to lots of other creepy places, but I would say this rate's quite high on the scale of paranormal activity.
Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, 18th century vaults hidden within the foundations of one of the most haunted cities in the world.
The reputation of Edinburgh vaults was one of murder, was one of mayhem, of mystery, of torture.
These subterranean slums housed Edinburgh's poorest and most deprived citizens, most of whom have never left.
If I could describe the vaults in one word, I would say intense. Probably the most haunted experience I've ever had as an investigator.
Down here, nobody is safe.
I'm one of the ones that does get picked up on. I just saw a shadow. Can I stop? I literally just saw a shadow.
Edinburgh, Scotland's historic and beautiful capital. The 7th most populous city in Britain is a vibrant and exciting place to be. But underneath the flagstones, you'll find the unworldly remains of a forgotten slum. Formed in the foundations of the South Bridge in the 1700s, these vaults originally housed tradesmen. But due to regular flooding, the units were soon abandoned and taken over by Edinburgh's underclass. Eventually, the vaults were sealed up and forgotten about until they were accidentally unearthed in the late 20th century. Ewan Armstrong spends most of his days and nights down here, guiding tourists through the unholy catacombs.
Well, when I started in the vaults many years ago, I wasn't a massive believer in ghosts. And I know many people do say the same thing, they're not massive believers. But when you spend time down in these rooms, just like anywhere else, you get to know the space, you get to know every noise and rumble and bang. So when you hear things that are different, you do question them. But I have seen many figures, apparitions in these rooms. And again, when you're working here, you tend to always rationalize and think it's maybe a customer that's wandered in or somebody, a colleague, and then you realize that there's nobody else with you.
The underground world crackles with paranormal activity. Witches, children, and a mean-spirited voyeur haunt the 18th century vaults. The spirits that call these rooms home are now all that is left inside the dark, empty chambers.
I believe that the Edinburgh Vault is such an active, paranormally active location because of the murder that took place there, the crime, the punishment, and the overcrowded conditions that there were in the vaults.
The history alone makes it haunted. Whether it's spirits or energies, there's so many things that are going on that you're experiencing when you're down there. I would definitely say it's haunted.
With the vaults being used for over 100 years as an underground city, it's thought that over 10,000 people may have passed through these rooms. So I think it's no surprise to find that maybe one or two of them may still be here. Many people have reported a shadowy figure standing on the steps here or following behind them as they make their way down these passageways.
Visitors to Edinburgh's South Bridge vaults often report seeing ghosts. One of these spirits is still seeking revenge for her death over 200 years ago.
So with so many of these rooms being used for brothels and taverns, it does lead many mediums and clairvoyants to pick up on spirits around the area. And one of the most common ones within our section of vaults is a young female who has been picked up on many times, and actually it's one of the ones that I've witnessed myself in these rooms, and that's outside in our corridor here. Many people have seen a woman standing in this location, and they always report the same thing. They report the long, dark hair, but also what looks like blood on her face.
Apparently, the story goes that she went down there to meet two men, and she was actually set upon by a group of 30 men and was actually murdered. Now, because the group of men was so large, nobody was actually prosecuted for her murder, which could be a reason as to why she's still haunting the building.
I've had many people come down into this particular section and witness her. My scariest one here was during one of my daytime historical tours in which a small boy from New York, a 7-year-old, on a holiday, he sat physically on the steps and started in front of a group of 14 people started physically talking to a woman here, and he said that the men had been bad to the lady. She was stopped on these stairs, where it's reported that she got her head so severely beaten off the steps. The woman's body that was found here in 1797, and Elizabeth Ann Morrison, she was found with her skull in over 6 pieces. Her body itself being taken to the local school, the anatomy, and sold on for nothing more than beer money for the local police.
She obviously has some unfinished business. Nobody was actually tried for her murder, which means they got away with it, and she probably won't rest until he's been found, but obviously she's never going to rest now.
Paranormal encounters with ghosts, just like the murdered woman, are the reason that tourists come from all around the globe to visit this dark, underground world. And many leave with unexplainable souvenirs.
So people who have been down to the vaults and spent time there have reported being pinched and scratched, prodded. They've reported hearing noises. Some have claimed to have seen apparitions and also have had rocks and stones thrown at them.
Physical contact with the spirit world has led experts to believe that a poltergeist may be active in the vaults.
The word poltergeist is the German word for noisy ghost or noisy spirit. They are able to throw objects, move objects, interact with the living, and will cause mayhem and distress anywhere that they're found.
If you are lucky enough to have any sort of physical contact, such as a push or a touch or anything like that, well, it makes people feel wary, wondering who stood behind them, and especially if you're in the dark, it kind of enhances the fear factor.
Edinburgh is spread across 7 different hills. After the success of the North Bridge in 1772, town planners decided to commission another, the South Bridge. This new 1,000-foot-long expanse would be able to house tradesmen within the 19 arches below.
The bridge itself was built in the valley of the Cowgate, which itself had been quite problematic over the years, involving things like plague and witchcraft. And it was one reason the kind of slightly more scientific Georgians, who weren't the biggest believers in a curse or myth, they thought by putting these rooms here, they could, well, get rid of the past and start again.
After 3 years of construction, the bridge and its high-end shops were ready to open.
One of the oldest stories associated with the bridge as to why it might possibly be haunted is that when it was completed in 1788, it was agreed that the wife of a judge was going to be the first person to walk across it, but she unfortunately passed away a few days before. But having already made the promise, the local authorities agreed to uphold it, and indeed she was the first person to cross the bridge, but in a coffin. And since then, the local people have considered the bridge to be cursed.
And it appeared that the locals may have been right. Despite the tradesmen thriving to begin with, after just 3 years they were forced out due to flooding.
And of course this meant as these merchants moved out, some of Edinburgh's most poor and destitute moved in. And that is of course when the underground city is born. And that also covers people from the Irish famines, the Highland clearances, all moving here en masse, raising the population and also rising the crime rate.
As you can imagine, if there were 10 to 16 people living in one room and all stacked up on top of each other, the conditions were pretty horrendous. There was, running water, there was no sort of method of sanitation, there was no ventilation, it was incredibly dark, to the point where it's real pitch black. You can't see the hand in front of your face.
Sometime around the mid-1800s, the vaults became so uninhabitable that even the poorest citizens had to leave. A history of death, disease, and crime were sealed away. The ghosts of Edinburgh's vaults remained buried for over 100 years.
So back in the 1970s, this particular room became the point of interest for a group of students who were using these rooms. Of course, they were renting a flat connected on here, and naturally being three young gentlemen, they knocked through one of the plasterboard walls and found all this behind it and used it for many months for parties. But in one evening here in 1979, it said that at a wild drinking party, two young girls who'd been attending, they both at the same time got held against this wall by nothing. They were terrified. If something was holding you against a wall and you wanted to report it to the police, you have to have somebody seen doing the crime. But they never saw anyone.
In 1985, the underground chambers were excavated and the world below was once again discovered. Since then, the Edinburgh vaults have come alive with the echoes of the dead. Below the cobbled streets of Edinburgh are a series of vaults, once home to traders before becoming a slum for the underclasses. The labyrinth of mysterious rooms play host to a number of ghosts. But it's not just underground where you'll find the spirits of Scotland's capital. Edinburgh is home to many of the world's scariest hauntings.
I think the thing with Edinburgh is it's a very old settlement. Obviously, you're built between two volcanoes again, and many people, especially things like pagans and Wicca, they believe that that makes it an energy hotspot. But I think because Edinburgh, for many hundreds of years, was such a small place, because of the barrier walls being built around us and the continuing problem with the English-Scottish wars, it does mean that life is lived very quickly within a very small space. And I think maybe that intensity of life and loss of life has led Edinburgh to be a very haunted place.
But it's beneath the noisy capital city where most of the ghosts reside. And there's one in particular who has been known to terrify both the locals and the tourists.
Many people have reported seeing apparitions in the vaults, and people have also reported being grabbed by unseen hands. There are dark forces there, children's spirits. There's also a spirit called the Watcher, aka Mr. Boots. This spirit has been seen by many visitors and tour guides in Edinburgh vaults. He is said to linger and lurk in the dark tunnels and chambers, watching people, and he also interacts with them, following them around as they're on tour.
Mr. Boots is one of the vault's most feared residents, a mean-spirited man who has become synonymous with the footwear he treads the vaults in.
These steps are where people do report seeing him the most. The sound of heavy boots, the sound of groaning, growling is also heard here. And many of our customers and staff, as they've been in the area, they will get that hackles raised and they will naturally turn just because they think something might be behind them. No one really knows who he is. There's rumours he's a cobbler. There's rumours that he could possibly be a slum landlord, a murderer. But the one thing that is most common with him is these not good intent. There was one psychic medium here not too long ago, and she actually ran out of the vaults when she tried to communicate with him because she said he was completely evil.
When you have that feeling of someone watching you, you are conscious of that all the time. And especially if you're down in the vaults and you venture anywhere on your own, which 9 times out of 10 I usually do, it's not a nice feeling. You do get kind of the feelings of dread and anxiousness, and obviously the adrenaline starts to rush, and when you do actually think you've captured something, that's when the adrenaline turns to excitement.
This photograph, taken by a tourist, shows Mr. Boots standing ominously behind an unsuspecting woman.
He's stood lurking in the background, he's blocking out some of the light, and there's a clearly distinctive feature. He's wearing a pair of boots.
Local paranormal investigator Gordon Peat has been visiting the vaults for years. He has felt the presence of Mr. Boots on numerous occasions.
He believes that the vaults are his, We had some of our guests being physically touched. They felt cold, scratched. But there was no pushing or shoving. But there was quite a lot of activity on the human pendulum. You invite a spirit to push that person forward or backwards to answer the questions, yes or no, and that was really active.
Nikki Curry was on a ghost hunt in the vaults in January 2018, when she too had a mysterious encounter with Mr. Boots.
We did some Ouija boards and stuff and table tipping and stuff like that, and then we went off on our own, and that's when there was just two of us that came up here on our own, and we felt somebody was watching us, and there was nobody here because everybody else was down the other end. I couldn't move, I actually froze and said there's somebody staring at us, but it was pitch black, so didn't see anything. So I says, let's take a couple of pictures and then we'll go. So we took our photos on our iPhones and then just left.
It wasn't until the following morning that Nikki looked back at the pictures. She couldn't believe what she'd captured.
It just looked like a figure. It just looked like somebody was walking down the stairs in front of us. Somebody did a bit of research and said it might be the Watcher, and that's why we obviously felt like we were being watched. It did look like a figure, and it looked like he had long hair, and it looked like he had boots on. So, yeah, it is an amazing photo. I'm just chuffed.
The eyewitness that took a photograph of apparently Mr. Boots, he clearly displays an image there of what looks like a long coat, some kind of outfit that's touching the floor. There's no facial features, but the apparition that's manifesting itself is very tall, it's very slender, and it does definitely have a long robe or some form of coat that it's wearing.
Experts believe that sightings of Mr. Boots are like action replays of the past.
One theory that was proposed in the 19th century to explain possible appearance of apparitions was something known as stone tape theory, which was the idea that material such as stone, or similar to the way a cassette tape might work, can retain sort of impressions of the past.
It's almost like time rewinding over and over and over again and constantly replaying the same thing because it was imprinted in the space.
So the reason why people might think, for example, that Mr. Boots remains within the vaults is because perhaps he is a projection that has been stored in the sort of stone, and therefore he, in fact, is not looking at anybody. We are just experiencing him from a different time.
Nikki has returned to the vaults for the first time to face her fears.
It's weird being back here. Like, when I look there, I think, yeah, that's weird, because we did feel really scared standing here. It's actually quite scary standing here just now, and it's daylight, it's not even during the night.
But what if Nikki had come face to face with Mr. Boots?
I think we would have screamed. I think we probably would have been in a huddle. I don't know if we'd been able to move, because there's nothing up that way, so I don't think we would have got it out. I don't know, I might have passed out.
The entrance to the South Bridge Vaults is on Nidri Street. The road itself has a scary past.
So when these vaults were first built, it's partly to encourage new business, but also to discourage the past. And with this particular section of vaults here, this being Nidri's Wynd, the original street, it's a street very famous in the 1580s, right into the early 17th century, with witchcraft trials. And of course, the most famous one on this particular street is a woman called Agnes Finney. And she's reportedly still lingering in these rooms. She's known to have cursed the entire street. She was herself, of course, burnt to death after being accused of 20 counts of witchcraft, including, apparently one day in the marketplace, bumping into a small boy in which she cursed him. He's known to have become paralyzed and died 2 days later.
The history of witchcraft continues to this day in the vaults.
This is our room that we have rented out to the Source Coven of the Blue Dragon. They're Scotland's leading pagans or witches. And with this particular room here, they believe they've blessed it.
Everybody is quick to assume that witches are bad or dark or evil, or they're trying to conjure, and they're very capable of that, but majority of them is for the good.
Many of our customers who come down here on these tours, they have, of course, taken photographs in this location, and they will sometimes pick up on what looks like a figure standing in the particular room here. Which again for us is strange because it's meant to be a protected room. That's why you've got things like the gargoyles outside. They were placed here by the witches to stop anything evil entering. So whether the figure is malevolent or a more positive person, again, we'll leave that up to the people that visit these rooms to decide for themselves.
This photograph, taken inside the witch's room, has been analysed by paranormal experts across the world.
The picture makes sense because if there was a coven down there, that's a lot of energy. They bring energy together to make things happen. Buildings hold energy. So that totally makes sense that you would see such profound energy coming up from inside the pentagram.
I saw some photographs of the witch standing in the corner, very, very clear photographs of the witch in the corner. Unfortunately, none of our cameras picked up anything the times that we've been here. I'd love to have seen that for myself and for our cameras to pick that up.
The activity within the vaults is very exciting for a keen ghost hunter like Gordon.
It's an intense feeling. It's almost you're waiting for something to happen. It's overwhelming, the feeling. You feel the hairs in the back of my neck standing up just now being here, that you just don't know what's going to happen. An uneasy feeling being here.
An uneasy feeling caused by the supernatural inhabitants who remain in the Edinburgh vaults some 200 years after their deaths. Only a few feet below one of Europe's most historic cities, ghosts haunt a maze of vaults that once housed the underclass of Edinburgh. One of the chambers in particular has been rife with paranormal activity of an evil kind.
Back in 1995, a group of local Wiccans, they moved into this particular room. The stone circle you can see here, it was placed here by them to be a protective area, an area of safety. On one occasion, a priest who came on a tour here, he believed he picked up on a demonic entity telling us we should simply brick up the door. But people do come in, and those people that pass through the stones are apparently in the greatest of danger because the witches who use our vaults, they believe they shut the circle down in 1995, and they believe they shut it down and offered the space inside to whatever malevolent entity was here. And since that date, customers come in here, again, many people gesturing to each other to walk in, to taunt it, and they will leave with scratches, cuts, bruises, and many people reporting for many weeks afterwards, suffering things like sleep paralysis, seeing shadows and shapes moving around their own homes.
Paranormal investigator Tom Buckmaster had a terrifying experience when he tried to cross into the demon circle.
From the moment we sort of walked into that place, we were being followed by shadow figures. We had footsteps following us up the corridors towards the vaults. I mean, it was just a strange, eerie place that you just feel constantly that there's something else there with you.
Tom's footage from November 2016 reveals the fear felt by himself and his fellow paranormal investigation team members.
I think one of my team members, Kev, he stood in the stone circle. Obviously, there's supposed to be a lot of negativity around that. Apparently, there was a ritual kind of done to keep a demon within the stone circle. If anyone steps in there, people have been attacked, scratched, pushed. I think they've even had ambulances called to people. When he stepped in there, he felt something touching his back. The whole room went ice cold. It's quite cold down there already, but there was just a significant decrease in temperature. And at the same time as he was in there, we turned on the digital recorder and we caught growling sighs that just weren't there in the moment. What is that? Rewind it quick. There's a growl on that. It was just like a intense fear. Obviously, I'd heard about things that had happened in there, but it was just like I was all up for it before the investigation. Even when we first got there and we were setting things up, I kept saying, "I'm going in it. I'm gonna go in it. I don't care. I'm gonna go in." The point when I was about to sort of put my foot over, something was just, I don't know, it's like a feeling, just something stopping me, as if someone's telling me, like, don't go in there. And it was just an instant fear, goosebumps, my whole body was just sort of reacting, and I just couldn't do it. It was just something stopping me.
You feel you don't want to do it, don't do it.
In my head, it was just like that feeling of, you just know something's going to go wrong if you do it, if that makes sense. Just that pure fear. That's the only way I can describe it. It's really strange.
Still scarred by that night, Tom has yet to return to the vaults.
They can be terrifying. Yeah, truly terrifying at some points. I do definitely want to go back. I think there's more to the place, there's more we need to sort of find out. And I think if we do go back, we'll probably get more than what we did before.
When the South Bridge vaults opened for business in 1788, many children disappeared while working down there. Paid by local tradesmen to climb up chimneys and clean them, some of the children never came back down.
The vaults themselves, back in the days of business, these were very well-run rooms, some of them, of course, accommodating things like a fireplace. And there is, with one of our rooms back in 1992, during making the site safe for the public to come in here, one of the fireplaces was bricked up. And when they, of course, tried to renovate it and get it used for the public, they did actually find small fragments of bone inside it. And when these bones were taken away, it was discussed by the laboratory they were children's bones, apparently a young boy between the age of 7 to 12. It was common practice in these rooms that if you hired a chimney sweep, of course, you would send them up. But because the bridge itself structurally differed, there are differences within a chimney breast here. Maybe if that boy has gone up, slipped, broken his neck, he's stuck. And the easiest way to get him back out is by lighting the fire.
After the businesses shut down and the underclasses moved in, many children were born in the vaults, and they would die down there too.
There are lots of reports of children haunting Edinburgh vaults. Cries, whimpers, and also the laughter and singing of children have been heard by numerous people over the years. One reason for their spirits being trapped in this location is because they were all living in close living quarters and conditions back in the day. For many, many years, children there perished and died of malnutrition, of disease, and of crime and murder.
The children from the 1700s would have been peasants, so they would have been on the streets begging during the day and then just looking for somewhere to sleep at night. But they are very, very mischievous. They will throw things, they will torment equipment that we've got, drain batteries. We've also had people having their backs of their ankles kicked and things. So when you do have children, they do like to play and mess about.
Some spirits don't know they're dead, that's the thing. And they latch on to visitors to the vaults, especially women. And, you know, a lot of our female guests that came along had that sense, that they had a coldness from their waist down their legs, that their hands were cold, almost like someone was touching them. And they got that feeling it was a kid, especially the guests that were mothers and had that motherly instinct. They felt as if there was a child latching onto them and hanging onto them.
One of the most often sighted ghosts is a young boy called Jack.
He is one of the ones apparently responsible for, again, tugging at clothing and leaving many women down here running in fear. And again, many people think he doesn't mean harm, but because he is this mischievous spirit who does like to trip people up and throw things like stones and coins, they do think he's responsible for some of the more impish behaviour in these rooms.
And right on cue.
And one of the ones that does get picked up on, I just saw a shadow. Can I stop? I literally just saw a shadow. I'm not even winding you up. Seriously, not winding you up. I promise, honest to God. Right here. It went past this light. Just as we were talking there, I saw something break that light. That was weird. Like, I shit you not, I'm not even joking.
One of the most tragic events in the history of the city was the Great Fire of Edinburgh, which started in an engraver's shop on November the 15th, 1824. Hundreds of families living in the vaults perished.
One of the largest structures in the Royal Mile is known to have caught fire. With the wind picking up, that fire spreads, and of course they can't control it. This is, of course, just in the early days of the fire service. But the vaults, they're not deemed to be an important enough area to take care of, and many of the police are known to have locked the original entrance into the vaults, leaving many people in these rooms to fend for themselves. And there are many reports down here that 2-3 weeks after the fire had been extinguished and the doors were unlocked, people came down to find quite a tragic scene in these rooms. There is, in this particular section here, the story that the walls themselves, well, they conduct. And that heat raging above your head meant that many people would have died of asphyxiation or smoke inhalation, and that may have led them to take their own lives. So again, many people do walk into what is a room you can see your own breath in, and they feel the opposite. They feel very hot, very warm, they can't breathe. We've actually had to, in this particular room, end our tour for some customers that do begin to feel their skin burning in these rooms.
It was said that there was a bad fire there at one point, and that parents had to slit their children's throats to spare them from being burned. And that act alone, I believe, causes an imprint on the space, you know, something so tragic and horrific. So I definitely would think that you would see some child spirits there. Maybe they don't know they can cross over, or they're lost, or they're waiting for someone. But I definitely would understand why you would see child ghosts there.
But not all the spirits living in the Edinburgh vaults are quite so innocent. Much of the paranormal activity that has been experienced in the unhallowed chambers can be directly linked to murder. Edinburgh's South Bridge vaults are home to a number of paranormal beings. Once housing the dregs of society, the labyrinth of chambers are now a tourist destination and a popular mecca for ghost hunters. But this underground world also holds a criminal past. It's believed by some experts that the vaults were used by serial killing duo Burke and Hare. The pair murdered 16 people between 1827 and 1828 so that they could sell the bodies to a local doctor who would pay them good money.
This is an underground. This was really like, you know, Edinburgh's underbelly, if you like, back in those days. Rumours have it, various different reports of the history of Edinburgh reported that this is where, you know, the infamous grave robbers Burke and Hare plied their trade, because people were dying every day. The mortality rate was so high, so it was ideal for them.
William Burke and William Hare were two Irish labourers who lived together in Edinburgh. In November 1827, their lodger, a man named Donald, died of dropsy. Short on money, the pair hatched a morbid plan.
It was Burke's idea to try and sell the body of the dead lodger to the local Royal College of Surgeons. And they contacted a Dr. Robert Knox. He offered to take the body off their hands and paid them something in the region of £7 for their efforts. And at the time, I think the average annual wage was about £40. So you can imagine that was quite a lot of money, particularly for two men who had up till then been working quite low-paid work. So I think having sold the first body, they thought that it might be a profitable business to start. I think the story is they started off robbing graves, which there was a fashion for at the time, again, because you could make a lot of money selling the cadaver. But that soon turned into murder.
And it's kind of one of the worst kept secrets, and it is to do with this hastily bricked up doorway. Behind the corridor here lies one of Edinburgh's biggest mysteries, and it's that of William Burke and William Hare, the infamous body snatchers. There is a network of rooms behind us which does run all the way from the Southbridge vaults into the medical school, the basement of Surgeons' Hall, the School of the Anatomy. And in the 1820s, that is, of course, the scene of, well, many crimes, including William Burke and Hare's 16 murders, victims, of course, being killed, maybe even sourced in these rooms around us.
During a visit to the vaults, a group of paranormal enthusiasts were trying to contact the spirits of Burke and Hare by way of a call-out session.
Call-out sessions are used to generate really energy to be able to communicate with the spirits.
In most situations, you're asking the spirits to interact with you by giving you a sound.
What is that?
Or perhaps manifesting themselves, or in some cases even touching you physically.
It's more or less an instruction to the spirit. You know, can you copy me? Can you whistle for me? Can you do this? It's more of an instruction to them.
Zoe White was playing the part of a sacrificial victim on the night of the call-out session.
Well, I was lying down. I was on like black bags pretending like I was a dead body. And everybody was in a circle, and the man was calling out, like, trying to bring a ghost forward. They were trying to call out the serial killer, saying, "I've got a body for you, come forward, make yourself known."
And as Zoe laid still, the atmosphere in the room changed.
Well, I just felt like wind at my hair, or like coldness. And people standing in the circle said that they felt the drafts and didn't notice anything until I got out of the room.
Once finished, Zoe sat down. It was then that her mother noticed something.
I was sitting down and I was going to like brush my legs off, and then my mum shouted, "Don't touch your legs." And then I looked down and I realised I had a handprint on my calf.
The photograph clearly shows some finger marks. These finger marks are quite spaced apart, very, very wide, and it is plausible that one of the spirits did manage to physically interact with this lady, leaving their handprint on her leg.
I was shocked because I never felt nothing happening. I didn't touch my legs, nothing, it just appeared. I must have been touched by a ghost.
As the night continued, Zoe again was chosen as the subject during a scrying session.
Scrying is an old Victorian method of spirit communication where you look into a mirror within a darkened room, usually used candlelight to actually illuminate the face. And what you actually do is sit and stare into the mirror, and as you stare into the mirror, your face apparently changes to the spirit that's supposed to be there.
You sit in front of this tinted mirror and there's candles round to you, and nobody noticed till after that there was a figure there.
Usually, the spirit will try and manifest itself and show its face on your face, but in some cases, the spirits can show themselves in the mirror beside you, looking at you, or looking directly into the mirror also. The photograph depicts what appears to be a face manifesting itself in the mirror, looking at the lady as she's staring directly at herself and her own reflection. It's an amazing capture, and it's one that I've never seen before. Very, very unique and hard to try and get on photograph.
The photograph shocked Zoe.
My mum told me when I was sitting there that I had different features, like manly features. Like I had like a butch face and I had stubble on my face. I was excited at the time, but like after seeing like the male figure in the mirror and the photos and the handprint, it got a bit scary.
Some people are more in tune than others. They're connected to the spirit world. And if spirits can kind of find that tune and they pick up on it, they might well want to show themselves or interact with that specific person. In this situation, the woman clearly was a focal point and was the attention of the spirits that were there. They may well have been trying to show themselves to her, to communicate with her, to give her a message, or she may well have had links to that place or to the spirit itself.
Zoe returned to the vaults months later, but had an entirely different experience.
The second time I came, I was all excited, thinking something else will happen. But as soon as I entered, I felt sick. I needed to sit down. I felt like I was going to be sick. I needed to leave the building a few times. This was horrible.
The vaults continue to attract attention. Tourists in Edinburgh often find themselves drawn to the mysterious underground world, and new ghosts are being discovered all the time.
The idea that so many people had likely passed away while living in there, and the fact that they're incredibly dark and atmospheric, all lends itself to the perfect location for a haunting.
I don't think anybody coming here to do any kind of paranormal investigation would be disappointed. I think that there's a lot of activity down here. There's a lot of untold stories down here. And I think each time that someone comes back, if you come back 3 or 4 times a year, if you came here every weekend, something different would happen. You get some sort of different story, a different feeling from the vaults.
Paranormal experts who have visited the vaults all agree that they are extraordinarily active with all kinds of spirits.
In my personal experience, I would say that there are intelligent beings in those vaults. I do actually think there is some residual energy in there as well that kind of makes it feel as oppressive as it does. But my personal experience says yes, it is haunted.
If I could describe the vaults in one word, I would say intense. If you wanted me to give you in a paragraph, probably the most haunted experience I've ever had as an investigator. If you're into all things paranormal, you have to come to the vaults. It is an intense experience.
The future of the vaults looks to be just as fascinating and mysterious as the past.
I think the thing with the vaults is we'll never truly know all their secrets. The amount of people that have lived in these rooms, and we are talking about most of them who didn't have a chance to write things down. Many people are illiterate, and their experiences maybe go untold. So we never know whether they're here. But I think for these rooms, as we uncover more, and there are more vaults around us which haven't even been emptied yet, maybe when they get opened up, we will discover a lot more activity in these particular rooms. And again, if there was murders happening down in these rooms, there may still be somebody lying, waiting to get discovered inside them.